2. East Hampton Town Board, you are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the East Hampton Town Board work session of Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. Carol, if you could please read the roll call.
Present. Present.
Present.
Present.
Present. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Harold, do you have a sign-up list there or no? So today we start our meeting with the public portion. We ask you to kindly keep your comments to 3 minutes as a number of folks want to speak. Then we have topics today. We start with bids, and that will be presented by Lisa Valchik. Welcome, Lisa. Then we have the East Hampton Town Police Department 2024 annual report that Chief Michael Sarlo gives every year. That'll be followed by an update from the Water Quality Advisory Committee led by Rachel Grusin. And I see that we've got a number of members from the committee here.
Yes, I think Rachel is not feeling well today.
Oh, okay.
So Ramesh just told me.
Ramesh is going to pinch hit?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Then we've got a presentation from Joanne Pilgrim and Tom Flight, and that's the ADU Committee Code Change Recommendations. I do have to pull the fifth topic, the proposed amendment to Chapter 255 zoning, definition of community resource. We're going to move that to next Tuesday. And then lastly, we will have a presentation from Rob Connolly, our town attorney, on proposed amendments to Chapter 25 and the Code of Ethics. That'll be followed by liaison reports, and we have a handful of resolutions. So first signed up to speak is Jennifer Folks. Welcome, Jen.
Good morning, Supervisor Burke Gonzalez and members of the town board. I'm Jennifer Folks. Do I need to state my address too?
No.
Okay. Today I'm here speaking on behalf of OMAC, the Old Montauk Athletic Club. I'm here to ask that the town board consider a reduction in special events fees for OMAC events. OMAC is classified as a 501c7, which is defined as a nonprofit organization, but not technically a charitable organization. We are a community organization made up entirely of volunteers, and our mission is to produce events that benefit the community. We provide scholarships to graduating East Hampton High School seniors. We support our high school teams by providing the funding they need for special uniforms and trips to tournaments and other competitions. In fact, we've sent 2 East Hampton High School runners to nationals in recent years. We sponsor local adult athletes in races around the country. We donate to the local food pantries, the HLA, and other organizations that request our support. Most recently, through a very successful May Day 5K event in the village, we have been able to donate over $45,000 to local mental health organizations in support of adolescent mental health. So while we are technically not a charitable organization by definition, OMAC does support our community, and in the past, the town has waived the special events fees for our events. To that end, we are asking if it might be possible to work with the town on a reduction in fees for special events such as the Montauk Mile and Bruathlon. At OMAC, we all recognize that the support of the town in the way of police presence and other infrastructure is integral to the success of our events, and we don't want to be a drain on the town's resources. We are open to suggestions and want to both make sure we can still afford to produce events that benefit our community and contribute in a meaningful way to the town. Thank you. Any questions?
No,
Okay.
I'm sure we'll discuss it later.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. John Tarbett.
Hi, John Tarbett.
Welcome, John.
Hi, thank you. I got a feeling you know why I'm here. I did email the board last week. And I'm here to address what's become a significant issue in the permit process, zoning board and planning board. As you know from an email and probably know just general knowledge, is now taking well over 2 years to get a permit for a natural resource special permit or even for a planning board permit. And this is not an issue with staffing. Morgan and Tyler do a great job doing what they can to move things along. The process is broken. It just simply cannot take 2+ years. We have complete applications that we're told it's going to take 8 to 10 months for the planner to get to it. I want to be part of the solution. I know I have good ideas that could help, but I want to know the board is aware of it and that you're working on a way to allow people to get through the process quicker.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to address the board?
David?
David? Welcome, David.
Thank you. Good morning, David Buda from the Springs. As I did on November 12th, I'm here to speak briefly on the ADU committee recommendations for changes to the town code concerning accessory dwelling units, which used to be known as affordable accessory apartments. I think it was, they say it was Albert Einstein who said that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get a different result is the definition of madness. Instead of over and over again tinkering with the ADU formula and regulations and code provisions, what I suggest you do, as I did suggested on November the 12th, the real focus, if you really want to accomplish significant change in providing affordable housing, is not through the ADU mechanism, but rather through looking at the town-owned properties to see where you can possibly expand the affordable housing overlay zones in existing residential areas, and perhaps give us consideration to creating a new apartment zoning designation in appropriate locations. The town purchased a large tract of land in Montauk a couple of years ago that is sitting fallow. I believe it's on East Lake Drive. The town is currently apparently hoping to acquire from the county several large tracts of land, some of which might be appropriate for affordable housing. I don't know how that's going. Those were lands that the county had acquired by tax foreclosure and then had put up for auction, and you were, last I heard, in the process of hoping to acquire them for little or nothing. So that's really where the focus should be. But turning to the specific recommendations, there are two that are, in my opinion, totally outrageous. Number one, we're asking the board to reduce the minimum lot size for an allowable ADU to 10,000 square feet is really poorly thought out. The town has, over the years, since zoning was created in 1957, eliminated smaller residential lot zoning. There was a C zone at that time. And the minimum lot zone that we have is 20,000. And it's not because we, as a town, want to be exclusionary or elitist. It's because we live in an environmentally sensitive area. The county establishes minimum lot areas for subdivisions, depending on the water quality resources and depending on the land characteristics at either 40,000 square foot minimum or 20,000 square foot minimum. Our minimum lot zoning of 20 is a response to our environment, our concern for protecting our resources and bettering the quality of life for our citizens. It's not because we want to exclude people or be in any way discriminatory. To give consideration, now those areas of the town that do have 10,000 square foot lot areas, those are the areas that were established and populated historically in an older period of time and are the ones that are the most sensitive and therefore the ones least likely to bear the benefits of, bear successfully additional usage. Let me just move on to one other topic, and that one is actually the most outrageous suggestion. If I understand the proposal correctly, someone is suggesting that ADUs, the living area, the gross floor area, be excluded from the calculations and the limits that the town imposes in the zoning code for residential uses. How can you do that? That would be a type of reverse discrimination that would not sustain a court challenge. You certainly cannot give ADUs the exclusion from ordinary and regular zoning laws that establish a maximum amount of gross floor area within a zoning area based on the size of a lot, whether it be 10,000, 20,000, or 40,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Jason, is there anyone on the line that would like to speak
we
during the
do.
public portion?
Yes, give me
Great.
one moment. Let me just get that up and running. And in 3, 2. Hello, caller ending 4221. You're on the air.
Thank you, LTV. Good morning, Town Board. This is Jane Meering in Amagansett. I'm speaking to you today as an individual resident. As you are aware, I've spoken in support of all proposed affordable housing developments over the past 4 years. I've also supported the recently proposed density increases for senior and regular way affordable housing. So I hope I'm known to you as a firm advocate of affordable housing. I also agree it's confounding that our ADU program hasn't gotten more uptake, so I, of course, support working to address that. I also want to note specifically today, I'm not making any comments about, nor do I have any opinion yet, regarding the proposal to, quote, remove the requirement that the property be the property owner's primary legal residence. So I don't want to get too far ahead of your work session discussion later, but I'd like to offer some comments now. Point one. First, a correction to a key statistic in the PowerPoint. Slide 4 notes, quote, 58% of lots in town are less than 20,000 square feet, so majority of lots are currently ineligible. The correct data is, quote, 37% of residential lots in the town are sub 20,000 square feet, so majority, 63%, are currently eligible. Point two, I understand the motivation to consider dropping ADU lot size threshold to 10,000, but I do see this as potentially problematic for the following. One, 10,000 square foot lots are 50% undersized substandard to the 20,000 square foot zoning minimum, which is central to key goals objectives of the comprehensive plan. And two, it does disproportionately impact B residence zones, which have the greatest density. Some numbers, 56% of all lots in B residence zones are substandard to zoning minimums. 82% of all the 10 to 20,000 square foot lots across town are in the B zone, which leads me to point three. A, the proposal states that only attached ADUs will be permitted on lots between 10 and 20,000, and B, it states ADUs would be excluded from maximum GFA calculation. So per existing code, attached ADUs can be up to 1,200 square feet, and this means on a 10,000 square foot lot, the principal residence structure could exceed legally permitted GFA by as much as 55%. Respectfully, this should be viewed as unacceptable, especially given the undersized, non-conforming nature of these lots. Above-ground ADUs should be counted to the measure of GFA. In addition, it could make sense to prorate permitted attached ADU size above ground from 12,000 for lots down to 600 for lots less than 20,000. Also, removing a detached ADU option takes away design flexibility across a whole range of lots up to 20,000 square feet. I'm not seeing how that is necessarily logical or productive. Most important, not counting attached ADU square feet to GFA potentially creates a serious problem when ADUs are ultimately, quote, relinquished, such as on change of ownership. It's one thing to take a kitchen and plumbing out of a 600 square foot detached ADU and reverting it back to a conforming accessory structure. It's quite another thing to start demolishing parts of the house or allowing non-conforming GFA to continue. And I know I'm going over, but just my last thought here very quickly. Point four, the committee discussed, but did not support changing the term used to define ADUs as affordable. I do find this quite disappointing that the committee opposes ensuring ADU tenants are income qualified. We have thousands of folks on waiting lists in this town for affordable housing who are qualified as such. So it's a huge gap that ADUs will not meet that affordable housing hurdle necessarily. Thank you, and I really look forward to this important work session later today.
Thank you, Jane. Jason, is there anyone else on the line?
We have no other callers.
I'm just going to go one more time in the room. Is there anyone that would like to address the board? All right, so we're going to...
Do you mind, Madam Supervisor,
Sure.
if we have the chief of the East Hampton Volunteer Ocean Rescue here, Chief Andre Tributovich. You had a rescue this weekend that I was going to do my liaison report. Yeah. Okay, do you mind if you come and just tell the board about the rescue? Actually, you just have to come to the thing here. This is off. So.
Sure.
David, his name again. Tilson.
I was here
Sorry.
for a different reason.
You get
Just
right there
right
at
the podium, behind the podium, yeah, Andre.
Now I feel so official. Again, my name is Andre. I'm a chief of East Hampton Volunteer Ocean Rescue. Thank you for letting me speak, but I guess you just want me to give like a quick...
I believe there's a rescue that Volunteer Ocean Rescue participated in from some surfers this weekend, and specifically about locations of some of our equipment that your equipment that you deployed was essentially essential in that rescue of lives. And
Correct.
This being a cold water in March, on there then too. Just by chance, I caught you out of the corner of my eye. I was going to talk about it in my liaison report, but if you're okay with that. Sorry, on the spot.
Sure. Yeah. I'll be brief. Yes. So the call went over at Beach Plains. It was two surfers in distress. One actually made it to shore safely by himself. The other one needed help. So we, thankfully, to have the unit at Nick's Beach that we have, town provided. We used to have our Montauk rig. So just to give you an idea, yeah. So we have a full rig set in Montauk, Amagansett, and in the village of East Hampton. So the one that was in Montauk used to be in Playhouse, and once they started to build the pool, we had to move our equipment outside, and jet ski cannot be outside in the freezing temperatures. So that's why the decision was made to create something, and it was a great, we call that can, but it's like a heated container that's now located at right across the street from Sloppy Tuna, Nick's Beach. And so that's where we actually launched the jet ski on Saturday for the rescue that was happening at Beach Plains. And it's usually like, it's part of our protocol to do that as well, because Beach Plains, the access to the beach is getting sometimes really destroyed, and we can't really access vehicles on the beach, so it's always easier to drop the ski in the water either from Nick's, or if it's a lighthouse rescue, we go from the boat ramp in Montauk, Lake Montauk. And today, this past weekend, we were able to launch the ski at Nick's, and relatively quick response. It's winter, it's still, and we knew that people had floating devices, so we had to manage it. We didn't send anybody, directly, but if it was a swimmer in distress, we would probably get another additional resources to either paddle out or swim out to the victim. And it was rough water conditions. It was probably like a 6-foot swell with, high winds as well. I think our guys did a great job, and the fire department was there helping. And coincidentally, there was a East Hampton volunteer ocean rescue member, and her son was in the response from Montauk Fire Department. So they actually assisted the victim out of the water at Beach Plains. That's about it. I just want to thank you again for that unit that we have. Hopefully we'll work together on everything, and we'll have more rescues there and throughout East Hampton town. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to move on with our topics. Lisa, you're up with bids. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Lisa Valsich from the Purchasing Department. We have some extensions and some notices. So the first extension is for EH 24008, which is the compliance work at the airport fuel farm, and that's Gemstar Construction Corp. The other is EH 24-014, printing of envelopes and business cards. And we have a few vendors there. It's Check-O-Matic, Ridgewood Press, Concept Print, and Montauk Printing. EH 24-010, supply and delivery of international truck parts. That's Allegiance Trucks. EH 24-013, supply and delivery of Ford OEM parts, which is Newlands Bayshore Ford, excuse me. EH 23-022, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other uniform items. That's ABC Custom Sales. We have an RFP there also. So it's EH 2022-104, professional services for the collection of delinquent fines and penalties, and that's fundamental business service. And we're noticing for the annual cesspool and tank pumping services, and also for the RFP to license to utilize agricultural land at 20 Springs Fireplace Road. And that's it. We're a little busy. Enjoy your day, everyone.
All right. Any questions for Lisa? All right. Thanks, Lisa. Okay. So next up, we have Police Chief Michael Sarlo to take us through the 2024 annual report. Welcome, Chief.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today, annually having a chance to formally present our annual report, which we compile, usually is available some point in February or early March. All of the last 12 annual reports are available and accessible in electronic format in a link on our department website. So you can kind of go back. Each year we compile like a 5-year evaluation of statistics. So when you start piecing it all together and look through kind of how the flow of police work has gone within the township, it's all available there for the public to consume right on our website. I'll try to walk you through a brief summary of the report today and then answer any questions that you all might have. Obviously, it was another very busy and challenging year in local law enforcement with very heavy traffic volume, increasing demands for proactive and preventative policing measures, continuing technological upgrades, and ongoing progressive community policing efforts. The department continued to integrate our body-worn cameras, in-car video system, license plate readers, and fixed cameras into our operations. We recently completed the full implementation of a new records management system and computer-aided dispatch system. The efficiency and modernization of our department continues, and we appreciate your support in helping us work through these evolving and new, ever-changing requirements for us as a police department. I would like to recognize the outstanding work of our 2024 Police Officer of the Year, Nicole Fierro. Nicole led the entire department in overall arrests as well as in DWI arrests for the second consecutive year. Additionally, our detective division, in conjunction with the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, East End Drug Task Force, successfully completed a year-long investigation into a major narcotics distribution ring, which was operating between New York City and Montauk. It ultimately resulted in the arrest of 2 individuals on multiple felony counts related to distribution, sale, and possession of dangerous narcotics. The professional efforts of our patrol officers in developing investigative leads should not be overlooked in helping make a dent in the flow of dangerous street drugs into our community. We are fortunate to be able to renew the Citizens Police Academy during 2024, a tremendous program which engages community members and provides an excellent opportunity for feedback and engagement with our stakeholders and our officers. I want to thank Lieutenant Chelsea Tierney and Sergeant Kenny Alversa for spearheading that effort. Throughout 2024, our officers saved lives through Narcan administration, CPR, and defibrillator use. They performed heroic acts and routinely showed great investigative instincts and persistence in bringing justice and closure for victims of crimes. We continue to get high praise from the District Attorney's Office for the quality of our work that the department puts forth in prosecution of cases, while we also continue to build community relations through our DARE and school resource officer programs in the schools, collaboration with local mental health initiatives, the Child Safety Seat team, Drug Take-Back Day initiatives, crime prevention presentations with our senior citizens and local community groups. Training our officers remains a top priority in keeping up with evolving state requirements and yearly proficiency while ensuring our specialized units are ready to respond to critical incidents. Our police dive team, ESU team, and unmanned aerial systems team continue to provide valuable support for the department and the community. Some areas of instruction for our training include de-escalation, disability and vulnerable citizens awareness, responding to emotional crises, state liquor authority enforcement, school law and juvenile cases, active shooter and mass casualty response, and mental health first aid for law enforcement. We were also thrilled to welcome 8 new police officers hired by the department in 2024, with 4 of those being Spanish-speaking officers. We would like to thank and congratulate our retiring officers in 2024, including Captain Chris Anderson for his over 34 years of service, and Detective Arthur Scalzo, along with recently retired Sergeant Wayne Mata and Detective Sergeant Ryan Hogan. We thank them for their service to the community and wish them all the best in their retirement. To review a brief statistical analysis of department activity in 2024, the department effected over 500 arrests, including over 100 penal law and over 400 vehicle and traffic law arrests. Included in the vehicle and traffic law arrests were 190 for DWI. Officers issued over 4,400 traffic tickets, over 5,000 parking tickets, and 1,000 town code summons. The bulk of our calls for service, which take up a majority of our patrol time, continue to be medical aided cases, alarms, 911 hangups, and fire chief investigations. Motor vehicle accidents fell during 2024 below 800 for the first time in 5 years. while unfortunately emotionally disturbed persons calls also rose to a 5-year high of 114. Quality of life calls such as parking, noise, town code, civil disputes, speed enforcement all continue to grow and hold steady year to year, with actually commercial noise and civil complaints dropping to a 5-year low. Our investigation numbers continue to hold steady, showing no significant violent or pattern crime trends, which would be of a particular concern. Identity theft and fraud continue to climb, up over 100 again, mirroring a spike that we saw in 2022. Usually these are because of a particular type of cybercrime committed by people from usually either overseas or outside the community that end up hitting on people's phones and computers, and it comes in a wave. So that's why those numbers tend to fluctuate, but obviously it's a continued problem and something we're focusing on. Our crime index numbers and cases handled continue to show we are living in a very safe and relatively low crime community. Of particular interest in today's climate, we have received 0 ICE detainers or warrants during 2024 and the first part of 2025. And in the past 5 years, just 2 detainers and 1 warrant total. Unfortunately, the community experienced 7 overdoses during 2024, one of those being fatal, and there was 1 fatal suicide incident. With over 25,000 civilian interactions, the department received just 4 civilian complaints. We also had just 9 reports of use of force by our officers. In summary, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to continue to present our annual report. We truly appreciate the support the board continues to show for our officers in our operations. We'd like to thank all of our civilian support staff, other town employees, and the townwide volunteers we work so closely with throughout the year to ensure public safety for our community. If there's any questions, open it up to the board. Anything you'd like to discuss and something you've seen or have some questions about within the annual report?
Chief, I would just like to say that I think the public safety we have in this town is a variety of many factors, population sizes, our geography, but I think above all, it's how our police department operates in this town. And I thank you and all the officers for that. The commitment and the lifestyle choices you make to do that are an incredible gift to the society in which you live. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So going through the report, we've seen multiple of these. It's been very interesting to see over the time that I've spent on the board, maybe 8 years now, then too, how efforts of the board through our budgeting and trying to get the resources to the PD and Marine Patrol takes a couple of years to get to see the numbers potentially precipitously drop or increase in some which ways for violations, quality of life. The decrease in quality of life complaints is residential, you'll see there. One of the things that you'll actually see when you get to the Marine Patrol on there is non-compliant beach fires are up tremendously on there because we've had put efforts into the budget to actually get additional resources into the department to go for greater amount of schedules later in the night, Montauk, other locations then too. So you're starting to see that trickle in after you have a couple budget cycles into the report to numbers that people and our residents have asked us to take care of then too from our side. But again, just because we hire the individual or we put that in your budget, it's up to you to go make sure that individual's trained. Going back to training, some of your police officers have close to 280 hours of training a year. No, days. Sorry, hours. Hours, sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Weeks of training on there.
Right.
And this goes anything from dive team to the drone teams on there. And just this morning when I was in the village here, walking the village, I saw that the ESU team was looking at one of our places of General Assembly, you want to say, to go out and look at that for a potential location. If something happened, they were preparing, even today as we speak, then too. I don't know if you did that on purpose as you're saying it, but the amount of training that your department does there, that's not necessarily seen as much. But if you dive into the numbers on here, it really gets realized how professional the department is. And those are the things that make it a very safe place. One more for me. I've lived out here my whole life. A lot of us say that the Shinnecock Canal is one of those things that just geographically protects us. I agree with that, but I also say it's the East Hampton Town Police Department that protects us too. And under your leadership, we see that, and we're seeing the proof in this report. Then, thank you.
Appreciate that.
And I'll just touch on a couple. I agree with, of course, everything that folks have said, and I agree because it's proven in what your report for the work that your team has done last year, keeping us safe. I'll just highlight on page 11, and I encourage everybody in the community to really take a look and take a deep dive into this, because when you say statistics or when we say words like medical aided cases, really think about what that means. That means helping people that are in distress, families, kids, parents, that means, medically aided. I always feel like we use these terms, but when you dive down each of them, it's all about helping people in any way that your department can. I also want to highlight the average response time, which is phenomenal to me. I don't know how this can get done, but for priority ones, the average response time is 5 minutes and 47 seconds. And for priority two, it goes all the way up to 6 minutes and for another minute. So that is phenomenal to me. And the organization of your team and how quickly you can respond is what saves lives. So I just want to thank you for all the work that you do, helping our community be safe, helping them when they're in need, and also how quickly you get there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would just reiterate those, I agree with everything that's been said. And just very briefly, I appreciate all of that and what you do and your job as chief of police, but also how professionally you prevent things to us and the public. I've heard numerous members of the public comment in a positive way on how you conduct yourself, and it's greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to share, I haven't had an opportunity to actually talk to my fellow board members about this, but I guess it was a week and a half ago, I had the privilege of attending the graduation of 6 new police officers, and 4 of which are Spanish speaking. And I was also outreached by a couple of those new officers also. They're came off the local list. They're from our community. Some of them grew up in affordable housing. I mean, this is why affordable housing is so important. But the ceremony up in Suffolk County in Brentwood was really incredible. They had the bagpipes and the drums from I guess it was the Emerald Society of Suffolk County.
Sure.
There was a lot of pomp and circumstance. Apparently they practiced for a week. The precision of the officers walking in, the pride that they took. Then each officer was called up to the stage. Mike, you were on vacation, and so Lieutenant Greg Martin stood in for you. Yep. Also attending was Detective Sergeant Frank Sokolovsky and Sergeant Kenny Alversa. And just to show the support to, our new recruits of how important it is that we're going to be integrating them into the force. And, we had pictures taken and then, made it up on social media. But it was just an extraordinary experience to look at the officers like Lieutenant Martin and Sergeant Alversa. It was the first time they had been back to the academy since they themselves graduated. And, they were reminiscing about, their time at the academy. And it was just a tremendous experience. And I, suggest to my colleagues that the next time there's a graduation, we should really think about going in force, because it was an incredible experience. And then on Sunday, our new officers were all in uniform. They had their badges, they had their nameplates, and they were out, working the Montauk Parade, the Friends of Erin Parade. So they got indoctrinated real quick into, and I guess each one has been assigned to a squad, and an officer, and so it was a great. I guess last week they were training, right? And they were getting the lay of the land, and this was their first time out on patrol. So that was incredible. And then, as you mentioned, Sergeant Mata retired, and we had his walkout ceremony on Friday, and there was a great turnout for that, and we're grateful for his service. And I was having a conversation with Lieutenant Tierney, and we were talking about the police academy, the civilian Police Academy. And she was saying how we're actually getting interest from some of the young people that are taking the class, that this is kind of turning into a recruitment tool, not just about, educating the community on what it is community policing is all about, but there are now folks that are, after going through a couple of these sessions, that are interested in pursuing law enforcement as a career, which wasn't the intent of the academy, but it may be, one of the byproducts, which is pretty exciting. And many of the folks that expressed interest were Spanish speaking, which, we're looking to increase those numbers on our force.
Correct.
So
Thank you.
thank you for all you do.
Just my quick recap, as piggybacking on what some of you have mentioned, we do work very closely with the board to listen to the concerns of the community. And it can take us a budget cycle or two to get the resources we need to be able to focus on some of the areas of concern to make sure we have the personnel or technology to address those issues to improve public safety. And you guys have been a valuable partner in that. We appreciate your support. This annual report is one of those tools that helps us evaluate our own successes, failures, where we need to focus, what we can improve upon. And it's a valuable resource to us to be able to have this interchange with you and with the public forum. And my email address is right on the top of the department website. And any questions that come up out of anybody from the press or the public in reviewing this, by all means, please reach out. More than willing to continue the discussion. And my very last comment is that whole idea of the pomp and circumstance. The six months plus of training, 5 days a week, 10 to 12-hour days, culminates with that celebration. And those officers are now ours to continue finishing their field training. And we hope to impart on them that continued service to the community and the idea that we are here to help. And we're going to focus on investing in them to train them to be part of what we've built here as a department. And the support of the board and the community is very much recognized by everybody. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
Got it. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Ramesh, you're up. We're going to hear from the Waterfront Advisory Committee. We're grateful that you could, pinch hit today and get us up to
Would have been
speed on.
better if Rachel could have fielded this. She's down with the flu or something like that. The Waterfront Advisory Committee is a statutory committee that oversees the local waterfront revitalization program, which is the coastal component of the comprehensive
I'm just going to let Anne Marie
plan.
get the presentation up so people can follow along at home.
Coming up, I want to kind of frame this just
Yes,
as
so-
this is the long-term view of things that you guys get to work on, and is probably the more difficult part of your job, which is the real visioning for the community. These plans are set up with something like a 30-year horizon. And this one is coming due. So it's getting time to renew that view and update the planning tools that we've developed for this.
So I'm just going to go back in history a little bit, Ramesh, and give props to
Please
those
do.
that are due. So the Waterfront Advisory, the Town Waterfront Advisory Committee is part of the LWRP, Local Revitalization Plan, Waterfront Revitalization Plan that was developed by specifically a committee made up of Ramesh and other members of our community. East Hampton is one of the few towns that actually have an LWRP, and not only is that important for our coastal planning, few municipalities in New York York State. Not only is that important for our planning and development of our coastlines, but it also is one of the key foundations for receiving grants. And if it wasn't for the work of this committee and the plans that were put in place when we first got our LWRP adopted into our comprehensive plan, for example, the $600,000 coastal resiliency grant that we're now moving into planning stages would not have been awarded to the town. That was through this committee. So the work we are standing on your shoulders, Ramesh, in a roundabout way of saying all the work that you and others did to formulate our coastal resiliency in the beginning of developing this plan has been invaluable to us from the moment it got adopted.
Well, thank you. It's been a kind of a long haul over the years, and has been through several iterations. David has been one of the liaisons, and Kate has taken it over the last few years. And of course, we ran into some slowdowns with COVID, so we're coming around with a new round now. The mandate of the committee is to oversee this local waterfront revitalization program, which is a state mandated program with 44 coastal policies that the town adopted to its local conditions in cooperation with the New York State program. And let's see, we work with the supervisor on producing an annual report on the local waterfront program. And we advise the town board on demand as you see fit. Can we go to the next slide? Who's pushing that? Okay, so the plan itself is up on the town website, and it is. I see that it's still under Andrew Cuomo's governorship, but the full plan is available there, and it is probably 700 pages of some bureaucratic gobbledygook, but also a great deal of detailed content about the town's local conditions and coastline, and very detailed policies which have influenced our ways of approaching zoning and natural resources and a slew of other policy issues, including public access, fishing, recreational issues, land use, and everything from scenic to historical resources. Next. So we have 5 members on the committee, 3 of whom are here, including myself. Rachel Grusin, whose PowerPoint talents put together this presentation, is a science teacher and has been an environmental consultant, lifelong resident. Peter Strugatz, who is
here
there somewhere, wave please, is a trained coastal engineer and has also done a great deal of environmental entrepreneurial work. Mike Northrup is the program director for the Rockefeller Brothers Sustainability Foundation, and he has incredible connections throughout both the national and international community that kind of networks around climate issues. So he's been really useful in bringing resources to bear that help us to focus on climate change issues particularly. He's also a local resident and grew up out here. So, Andy Harris, who's also here, there he is our Montauk Eyes and Ears and has been a participant in a number of the town's environmental committees over many years, and has really helped us in particular on this Montauk grant that Kate referred to in helping to focus and pull that together. Next one. And Kate has, of course, been an enormously capable liaison for our committee. So the way that this legislation came into being is interesting because it derives from federal coastal zone management legislation that was put out in 1972, and it is set up so it's grassroots up, which means that we conform to the kind of outline of coastal policies that the state puts together. But then once our program gets approved, the state and federal agencies are supposed to conform to our policies, which is different than the way it usually works from the top down. And probably in the current environment, that may be an advantage, we'll see. The draft of this document that we use was finished in 1999, and it was approved by the town board, but it was not approved by the state until 2007 under the McGinty administration, because some implementing legislation had to be passed and usual political complications, so we say. Anyway, so it has been in effect and part of the town's planning process since 2007. So as a document that was designed to have a 30-year planning horizon, it's about expired. Next one. And it has been put into the comprehensive plan. It is that outline of what we're supposed to be doing along the coast, the policies, if you go into them, and they're used regularly by the planning department and zoning, as Kate can attest from when she was zoning chair. It's leverage at times when you need to have reasoning and policy language behind decisions. And it has helped the town in a number of instances in defending its environmental policies. Next. So Kate referred to the eligibility for grants, and there's a point system in the as I'm sure you're aware of, in the state consolidated funding application system. And having an approved LWRP gives you a leg up. So in this Montauk project that we're received a rather sizable grant for, that was definitely a factor. We've also been encouraged by the Department of State, the coastal program under which these LWRP programs proceed, to apply for an update of the our LWRP. So we would like to do that for this current funding round coming up the
applications go in, I think, in July. So there's some preparation that needs to go into that. We have thought to do it probably in 2 stages so that it doesn't become as much of a burden as the last time around, which I think we took almost 10 years to do it as a complete local program. So hopefully that can be done much more quickly since we have the skeleton of it already. So the challenges that come next are much more, pronounced because of climate change, the severity and increase in the number of storms that are coming our way that I think we're all pretty aware of, and that, we have dodged the major bullets to date, but that is not going to continue forever, certainly. Next one. So part of the LWRP is a projects list. And we have addressed a number of recommendations for that, which went to the board, I think pre-COVID. Probably we should get you an updated version of that to consider. A lot of these things converge with what has been done in the interval. For instance, the CARP program, which has already been incorporated into the comprehensive plan, the hazard management plan, planning that Tom is working on. We would like to bring to bear a longer term aspect of that, particularly in relation to flooding and erosion and long-term shoreline recession, water resource management, and all of the sort of longer-term aspects of sustainability for the town that really need to be looked at in terms of climate change. And the things like the Hamlet plans that have already been pulled together. So I think there's a convergence of both the interests that would come from the LWRP update, the current projects like the Montauk Resiliency Plan, the CARP and the Hamlet plans, and all of that can be pulled together and will become the blueprint for the preservation and sustainability of the town over the next coming decades. So it's difficult to take that kind of a long-term view because there's so much uncertainty involved in that, but it's still, I think, the necessary exercise that we have to undertake, and especially as we are more on our own. Can you go back one slide? I'm sorry. So the background of this slide is from the CARP plan, and that is the graphic from the 2030 to 2050 period when the town may begin to look like 4 islands, which is a sobering proposition to begin to envision for all of us, I think. Okay, so thanks. So these are some of the priorities that we are asking you to consider, that we apply for the update to the LWRP itself, that some of these long-term sustainability issues around modeling the sea level rise and what that's going to look like, as in that CARP map that we were talking about, the longer term hazard mitigation and a hurricane damage mitigation planning that is the extension of what Tom is looking at with the emergency services and short-term emergency planning for storms, and what measures the town can take to adapt to climate change over the long term. We think that we have some talents and abilities within the committee that we can bring to bear and hope to be helpful as we proceed with some of these planning exercises. And we're appreciative that we've had the opportunity to work with you all. Thank you. Oh, and the last slide. I think this is just a great illustration. This one's thanks to Google Maps, but you know, the fragility of our town sitting out in the ocean and the graphic view of that, you know, satellite image. I think in that sense of where we are is important to keep in view as we work on these matters. Thank you. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
So I'm just going to start for a second and thank you for all you've done and all you continue to do, and the entire committee. I just want to emphasize that the local waterfront revitalization program includes resiliency for our business downtowns as well. And that is going to continue. So the Coastal Assessment and Resiliency Plan built out of this plan, and now the work that we're doing on the Montauk Resiliency Grant is going to build on these plans altogether. And that is, while we're looking at what Tom is looking at, the short-term hazard mitigation, instant recovery, what we're going to be looking at in the resiliency grant, I'll just remind everybody once again that this is how do we get our business areas up and running? How do we get businesses back online as fast as possible? What can we do to pre-plan for these events? So we'll have that RFP going out soon to start this study, which is the longer look. Also, we'll talk about what we already know are effective natural barriers and natural recoveries for our coastal areas, returning our living shorelines, returning our depleted wetlands, because these are the sponges, these are the ways that all of this information gets incorporated into the idea of resiliency and sustainability, which not only includes the environment, but also the community. So if we didn't have this work in the past, we would not be able to plan for a sustainable future.
I hope you'll think of the Montauk program, the resiliency plan, also as kind of a model for the other parts of the town as well.
Absolutely.
It's really going to, and to a great extent, I think maybe a model for other parts of Long Island as well.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the ADU committee code change recommendations. Tom, did you want to?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to be a little long-winded.
By Joanne Pilgrim.
Address some of the questions that were raised earlier. But just to kind of introduce this, the recommendations we have today are the result of the last year's work by the ADU committee with experts in the field of finance, law, building, real estate, operations, housing, and community relations. They're your neighbors, colleagues from a wide array of backgrounds. So I'd first like to thank Andrew, John, Deb, Bryony, Eric, and Punit for all their help, and to all the town teams for everything they've done in helping to guide this progress. You know, I also want to remind the public of what we as a board tasked this committee to do when we passed the resolution forming it. There are three clear goals: to streamline the permitting for accessory dwelling units and supportive housing, to enact policies that encourage development of accessory dwelling units, and make recommendations to town code to facilitate the development of accessory dwelling units. So ADUs, what are they? accessory dwelling units, right? That they are what I see as a missing rung on the housing ladder right now. They're a way for homeowners to get on, to build apartments on their properties that they can annually rent out to either family members or people who live and work in the town year round. They can range in size from 300 to 1,200 square feet, depending on the situation. And the rent that they can be charged is capped by the town to be affordable, depending on the number of bedrooms, from $2,200 to $3,260 a month. They're a way, I acknowledge, to turn a single home property into a two-family property. They're also a way for property owners to help address the housing emergency. We talk about risk in the last presentation, long-term risk. We have immediate risk here. This is in a way that can help generate income for families and leave a modest environmental impact in doing so. What aren't they? They're not short-term rentals. They're not summer homes. They're not open market apartments. They're not ghost apartments. They're not commercial space. So why are we talking about them again? So we're a pro-housing community, but we have a broken housing system. We need to address the loss of housing for people who live and work in this town year-round. Its impacts are a huge risk to this town. It's not on the town's, risk assessment list at this point in time, but our ability for local business and government organizations to operate, be it the towns, schools, state, county, is significantly impacted by their ability to hire and retain staff who don't want to live here because they don't get paid enough or they can't afford the rent. It's an affordability issue. It is also a primary driver of many of the other resident concerns we face today. The traffic, the litter, the support and volunteers for key local organizations, to name a few. The proposals today look to address a very specific part of this broken housing ladder, the inadequate supply of affordable 1 to 2 bedroom housing. As we discuss moving forward for these to become code, we have to balance the risks that have been raised by people envision resulting from these proposed changes to town code against the risk we're facing as a result of the lack of the housing. For the proposed changes, it's the opinion of the committee and myself that we have adequate protections in place. Joanne will talk to some of those. I also think we need to talk about timing. Included at the end of this document is a timeline for how I would like to see this legislation proceed. I say that because for me, this housing is an immediate need, and this is one of the quickest ways we can increase the footprint of housing in the town. I also additionally, as I think it was raised earlier in the meeting, the importance of public record, forefront of my memory in our last GFA discussion were the references we made to ADUs during the work session stating how ADUs will not count towards GFA. I think having passed that legislation with that in mind, were we to go back on that, would have very different implications for that legislation. Lastly, I do kind of quickly want to touch on the discussion of affordable. Was raised by one of the callers in today. What is affordable? It's very different here to if you're saying East St. Louis. The U.S. Housing Department, which is the leading agency, is defined as housing on which an occupant is paying no more than 30% of gross income for housing costs, including utilities. There is the New York Community Housing Fund law we recently passed that says, affordable for 1 to 2 people is a combined income of $184,000 roughly. If 3-4 people a household with an income of $215,000. I will say this. We do have protections in the town for this already. No ADUs are allowed to be rented unless they're affordable rents, which are capped at 130% of fair market rent. If you go on Bonnock Rentals on Facebook and have a look at the rents that are out there in the public sector, these are definitively affordable. I think we need to bear in mind the need for housing is at all levels. It's not just the low-income levels. If you look at the open positions jobs on the town website, on the hospital website, these go up to much higher income levels than are typically expected. We need this housing desperately. With that, I'm going to pass over to Joanne to recap where we've got to and where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, Joanne.
Hi. Excuse me. Just start with a little bit of an overview. Tom's touched on a lot of this, but the committee that was formed basically looked at some core questions, which would be, what is the role of ADUs in helping the ongoing housing crisis? What regulations have worked and which haven't? and what changes to the town code policies or procedures could result in additional ADUs without compromising community character. The board last reviewed some recommendations from the committee in November, and since then the group has been meeting and has come up with another set of recommendations, which I'll go over. These are the recommended changes. Some of them are dimensional. So the first recommendation is to change the minimum lot area requirement for attached ADUs from 20,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. For detached ADUs, it would remain the same. There's no recommendation to change that. Also to change the maximum number of vehicles permitted on a lot with an ADU from 4 to 6 in order to not overly restrict properties with ADUs. And that'll be addressed on a coming slide in a little bit more detail. And then there's some recommendations regarding eligibility for where you can place an ADU. One would be to remove the requirement that the property be the property owner's primary legal residence in order to allow second homeowners to build ADUs. Another would be to add a requirement that the tenant must either be a family member of the owner or a resident, and resident is defined as someone who lives or works in the town of East Hampton. And then to change the rule that the ADU, right now, it's essentially keeping the rule but clarifying the definition. Right now, we say that the ADU should be the tenant's, quote, legal domicile. The committee's recommending that that be changed to the wording of sole legal residence to make it clear that the tenant really should not have another residence somewhere, that this is their sole residence. And then there was a discussion and the committee decided not to make a recommendation to change the terminology that's used for ADUs. And Tom addressed that a little bit. It's largely a question of terminology because ADUs by definition in the town code are affordable housing units, and affordable housing units in that definition defines the maximum rents as tied to 130% of area of fair market rent. So there's not an ADU that is allowed to be in the town without having a cap on the rent. They're required to get permits from our Office of Housing and Community Development in order to proceed. So to address the dimensional recommendations, the thinking behind the change in the minimum lot area for attached ADUs from 20,000 to 10,000 square feet, and I know this was a statistic that was questioned. I can't give further clarity today on this, but 58% of the lots in the town are less than 20,000 square feet. So the majority of lots are currently ineligible. The owners of smaller lots are often the people that can benefit from the rent charged that they will get from building an ADU, and many owners of smaller lots have expressed interest in doing so. It's kind of a win-win in their minds that they can provide a housing unit as well as get some recurrent income. Attached ADUs are less likely to increase the potential impacts on neighbors as they're within the principal building versus a detached unit. The ADUs would be excluded from the maximum gross floor area calculation, as has been mentioned, and there wouldn't be a net impact on the potential density in our neighborhoods because there's no change to the maximum number of permits for ADUs in each school district or overall the whole town. So right now that's set at 40 maximum per school district, and one of the things that's been looked at about doing things to encourage more ADUs is that none of the school districts are really very close to their maximum limit. As far as changing the maximum number of vehicles permitted on a lot to 6 from 4, the current requirement is that 2 spaces be dedicated for the ADU, but there's also an overall limit to 4 cars on a property. So that would leave only 2 available car parking spaces or cars to be allowed for the property owner and their family members. The committee discussed that the current requirement is unduly restrictive and that no other residential property has this limitation unless it's a rental property. We'll go into detail a little bit more about eligibility. So to remove the requirement that the property be the property owner's primary legal residence in order to allow second homeowners to build them. A lot of second homeowners have inquired about building an ADU. And, in discussing it, it's hard to find a reason that they should not be allowed to do so. I think the rationale behind the initial restriction was that it might be more common that there are disturbances on the residential site if the landlord is not in full-time residence, and that really hasn't been supported. And also second homeowners presumably use their properties themselves for a portion of the year. The town code is inconsistent because the summer rentals with the owner not on site are permitted, but the same owner cannot rent year-round to a resident. As far as the requirement that a tenant either be a family member of the owner or a resident living or working in the town of East Hampton, the effect of that is to prioritize housing for residents and the workforce. We know that family members are tenants in a good number of the existing ADUs, about a third of them. A resident, as proposed to be defined in the first-time homeowner down payment assistance program that the board will be discussing, is a current resident of the town or a resident within the last 5 years, or an employee of a business based in East Hampton town, and that in that proposed definition would include holders of East Hampton town contractors licenses. And then in terms of the, as I mentioned before, just changing the language that the ADU be the tenant's legal domicile to the sole legal residence would just make it clear that the tenant should not have other housing, and therefore they're someone in need. So the overview of the changes: change the minimum lot area requirement from 20,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet for ADUs that are attached or within the house. Change the maximum number of vehicles permitted on a lot with an ADU from 4 to 6. Remove the requirement that the property be the property owner's primary legal residence in order to allow second homeowners to build ADUs. Add a requirement that a tenant must either be a family member of the owner or a resident, meaning someone who lives or works in the town of East Hampton, and change the rule that the ADU be the tenant's legal domicile to saying it must be their sole legal resident, to make it clear that a tenant should not have other housing. And the last slide shows the timeline of next steps would be today's town board discussion of proposed code changes, and then routing this to the changes either for their meeting later in April or their May 7th meeting. The town board reviewing the town attorney's specific code changes in a resolution and scheduling a public hearing, which would take place either May 1st or May 15th. This would be then referred to the Suffolk County Planning Commission May 1st or May 15th. You could schedule a public hearing on June 5th following that, and then the adoption of code amendments would come at a subsequent meeting either on July 3rd or July 17th. If anyone has questions.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. Very good job. I do want to just talk about the area median household income, because this is something I worked in this industry for a long time with GIS for many corporations, that when you go into a new area, you draw the trade area of what you think a store or a facility is going to be, and you analyze the demographics in that, and you'll look at things like median household income, educational levels, and that will help you determine what the demand for that facility is going to be. One of the key factors when you do that is you draw your trade area and you make an assumption about what percentage of the demand is going to come from within the trade area and what is going to come from without. So in a high tourist area, such as our area, you're going to have a much lower percentage of your demand coming from within that trade area because people are traveling in to use it. What that means is that when you're looking at the median household income for an area with a low capture rate, we call it, it's often very misleading. In the case of our town, where we're talking about second homes, one of the things about second home ownership is that you're typically going to have a much higher median household income. But we are not capturing that in the census rate when we're looking at what the area AMI is. So I do think that, our terms of what's affordable with regard to AMI are potentially, somewhat misleading.
Okay. Do we want to
go through this one recommendation at a time? Would that be,
Maybe just go down the line, or
easier to do?
Sure, as
whatever
you
you want
wish.
to do.
So the first recommendation is to change the minimum lot area requirement for attached-only ADUs from 20,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. What are board members' thoughts on that?
Do you want to go down the line,
Or
or?
whoever.
So my thought on that is that it's so just overall, before we go through the recommendations, for me, we don't have an update on the program. So I don't know, I don't have basis for these recommendations. Like when it says many second homeowners, I would love to know the numbers. You know, what numbers are we talking about here in a lot of the terminology that we're using here? I think a report would have been great to be helpful to make decisions, because I don't know what any of the numbers are that we're talking about. When we did the 80, and I'm going to call them ADUs, because I really want to make sure that people understand that these are not accessory dwelling units like guest houses. It has to be affordable. It must be affordable and fit into our affordable program. And there are guardrails for that. But I would like to just see more analysis overall of what guardrails worked, what changes should be made. So that would be very helpful for me to be able to make a
Could you give a little bit
decision.
more detail on that?
Well, if you do a breakdown of how this is operated, the challenges, how many ADUs have come in, you know, a report.
We did speak to them in prior work sessions, I believe.
Yeah, so that was, I pulled the November 12th presentation because I wanted to go back. At that time, there were 43 properties that have ADUs in various stages of permitting. I don't know where that number is 5 months later. So that would be helpful.
There are still 43 ADUs existing, and there are 20 potential new ones pending through the +1 ADU program.
So 43 plus 20?
Mm-hmm.
And could you break those down by the school districts?
Sure. Right now, there are 2 in Amagansett, 4 in Springs, 7 in Montauk, and 20 in East Hampton. The additional ones would add 1 more to Amagansett for a total of 3, 9 more in Springs for a total of 23, 1 more in Montauk for 8, and 9 more in East Hampton for a total of 29.
And do you have that by lot size?
By what?
Do you have that breakdown by lot size?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Do you have the breakdown by lot size? You know, what size lots these are going on?
I think when you're talking about being capped at 40 units per hamlet, perhaps we're going into a level of detail that we're delaying delivering this housing for issues that are potentially important, but it's a very minute level of detail.
So you're, I shouldn't have questions?
No, I'm just saying,
Okay, so a breakdown by lot size would be great, so we could see what lot sizes are taking advantage of this. You know, if there's a scale of that, so we can work on what lowering it should be, if it should be a 50% lowering or go down to 15,000 square foot. I mean, I don't understand the justification for a 50% reduction in required lot size. It's not that I'm against it, I just don't understand the basis for it.
So we do have the number of lots, 10,000 square feet around it. We also, so you're wanting, do you want it for every 1,000 square feet? So 11,000, 12,000, 13,000?
We have a finite number, if you could just say what lot sizes those are on.
The 40 lots we have, the 43.
The 40 plus 20.
Right.
43 plus 20.
Okay, I mean, we absolutely can. Well, what are we hoping to learn from that?
It would help me make a decision, Tom. It would help me know which lot sizes are being most utilized for this program. It also would help me if, besides the word many, you had a number of how many second homeowners actually, because many, I don't know what that means.
So I would just say here, like, again, it's good information to have, but I think we run into, especially with the housing crisis, the issue of analysis paralysis here. we can absolutely get you that information.
Well, then I don't think it should take too long if you already have it. And certainly, I don't think I have a reputation for analysis paralysis, but we have to make our decisions based on some type of analysis. For me, it's helpful to have those numbers. I was asked to produce a lot of information when we were changing zoning codes. It wasn't the idea that there was a paralysis. It was the idea to ensure that these are for the people that need them. They don't become commodities, which is always a fear of mine. And it becomes an additional commodification of our neighborhoods. So for me, that's would help me be assured that the guardrails that we put in place last year, right? When did we pass this law? Very short time ago, that we've seen how this is growing and we're addressing the challenges for how it's growing. So if that's your definition of analysis paralysis, so be it.
Is the issue more about how is this being enforced? Like you're worried about people abusing the system?
That's another issue I have is how are we going to enforce any of the additional enforcements for the recommendations that you have in place?
The office of
If I
community
may,
housing.
Councilwoman, one thing I can say, and we can certainly look at the properties that have licenses for, have rental permits for ADUs and look at the lot sizes. But one thing I do know anecdotally and just from recent experience is that many of those who had applied for the +1 ADU grants, for which we recently just verified for CDLI, that they meet our minimum lot size. Many of them are just squeaking by to meet the minimum lot size. They're very close to half acre.
Yeah, so that's really important to know. So whether we reduce it in this phase to 15,000 square foot to capture all those, or if there's a basis for the 50% change in lot size.
Right. So out of those 20, I would say, off the top of my head, and we can certainly look at it again, many of them were in the zone where we had to double check and make sure they made that 20,000 square feet.
20,000 isn't even really a half acre.
Right. And the fact that we've gone from 43 to 63 in just a few months' time, to me, is a great sign. But that had the +1 from the CDLI program, that had an income cap. Do you recall what the income cap was for that program?
I think it's $125,000.
So the income for that home was under 125,000.
So it's presumably going to be people who are owning the.
So for me, and I'm looking at we're looking to do with the Community Housing Fund program, loans, right, up to $125,000. We're waiting for, the IRS.
Yeah, I'm not confident on the IRS coming back with rolling out in the next year or longer. Frankly, like we've spent a lot of money with that lawyer to get that ruling. We haven't heard anything back. I think there's other alternatives. But my colleague, Keller Piedmont, we've talked about this previously. I think if we wish to use CHF funding to support the ADU program, I think if we're going to achieve it in the next year or two, we need to take a different approach.
Rob, you don't mind, have you had any interaction recently with the attorney from Whiteman, Osterman, and Hanna
I have not.
All right, could you reach out to him and see where?
We received an email this morning.
Okay.
With some paperwork. The request has not yet been submitted to the IRS, and the town needs to arrange for a payment for the fees for the IRS in order to do so. That's what we got today.
So just for the public's benefit, I just want to say that what we're talking about is when we did the grants for the septic rebates, they were exempt from income tax. And then a controller changed that rule, and then suddenly folks got hit with an income tax bill that they weren't expecting on a $40,000 grant. Which for some folks that was considerable and quite a hit. So what we're trying to do here, what we're talking about is ensuring that folks know in advance whether it's taxable or not going to be taxed as income, any grant that they'll receive from our program.
I think the other thing we might want to consider asking legal advice on is what wording we could give to the public were we to give them a grant as to ensuring they've been adequately informed of what their tax risk is, should they take this grant and the IRS make a potential ruling. What's the maximum penalty they can incur? I think if people took the grant with that knowledge, I think the town would have done its due diligence.
Okay, well, on this issue, I don't want to get too sidetracked. I mean, I do, this is a more intricate thing. I think what Tom just said is important. If we know what the risk is, it might change things, but I don't want to get sidetracked. I do think that's a different conversation. In terms of the minimum lot size, I'm generally in favor of this. I think we want to encourage ADUs. We've identified them as one of the many solutions to the affordable housing crisis that we do have. So I'm generally supportive of this, and I appreciate the work that Tom has done. I know the Housing Department, Eric and Joanne, and the whole committee. I know a lot's gone into this. There's not just the last week. This is a big reduction, and I do think that the GFA comments are important here, in that, if we're allowing for much more development on a small lot. I will say that, and I don't have all of the numbers, and I think it's going to be hard for us ever to know who didn't apply because they knew that their house was too small, their lot was too small. We do know that through the CDLI, and I don't have an exact number, that many people didn't qualify because of the lot size. And so they were turned away. Some people might have realized that and didn't apply because they were already concerned. I do generally agree with Tom's point that we do, if we have a limit on the number per school district, I don't think we should be worried about becoming overrun, and we can change that number in any way we want. My only concern here is just the impacts of the development on a very small lot if it's feasible. My initial instinct is to be supportive as long as it meets all the other dimensional regulations, because from the outside it would look the same. I do think with the GFA exemption on a 10,000 square foot lot, it could change and this came up during the code changes generally, and I expressed some concern about outbuildings that would be allowable if there was an ADU in there, but if the ADU was removed, that structure would be non-compliant. And I think we'd have the same concern here, that if somebody builds a house with a large ADU, the new homeowner decides not to do that, how do we make them remove that? Practically speaking, do we, take off half the house? And so there's some issues here. I've expressed support of this to Tom, and so I'm not trying to change that. I think that based on a couple of public comments, I would want to look a little closer at this. And Kate brings up a fair point that maybe we go to 15,000 or something. Again, I would have to look at it more, but generally supportive of reducing lot size. And I think there's a lot of lots that are just slightly less than a half acre that would not qualify, that wouldn't create any major concerns. So generally supportive with those caveats. Sorry, Tom, not be more specific about that.
Because my concern is I'm not comfortable going all the way to 10,000 square feet. The point of going from 4 cars to 6 cars, you put 6 cars on a 10,000 square foot property. I mean, that changes the complexion of the neighborhood. I mean, I just think that that's too intense from my perspective, because typically, with small lots, it's in a small lot neighborhood, and I just think 6 cars are a lot of vehicles, and that's your front lawn.
I hear that. I would also say that's what low-income households out here look like. We might not want to see it, but we need it.
Okay, so can I make my comments if you don't mind? So I'll go to the easy ones.
Yeah.
The eligibility aspect of it then too, I think matching the code.
Are we going line by line? Point by point? I don't really care. I only comment on the first one.
Okay, so I'm so sorry. Are we still on the dimension?
We're at the first one.
Okay, dimension.
20,000 to 10,000.
So I think we also have to recognize that there's different types of accessory dwelling units. There's detached and attached ones also then too. On a small lot size, I think it was my first legislative thing that I was able to move through, was decreasing lot size for detached accessory dwelling units. And that really didn't increase from, I think it was 3/4 an acre down to 20,000 square feet. We picked 20,000 square feet at that time because it was just under a half acre, and typically what was considered a builder's half acre, which is a lot of what Springs is at 0.47 an acre. And that was whatever they did in the 80s or 60s and stuff like that. So that added in a large percentage of lots to that. It didn't overtax and burden the system being the staff that we have to do so. I think what we're seeing now, it was with the work of Tom and others, is that we're finding funding sources to actually pay for these, and that's why we're getting a large increase there then too. I do have concerns about a couple of things on lot size. If you're at a lot size of 10,000 square feet, you can clear cut the property. That's in the town code. Hence, if you're at a lot size of 10,001 feet, you can't. And two, so that, you know, what are you doing for a vegetation on a property? If you're going to a parking space is going to be 180 square feet, typically, you know, 20 by 9 or 18 by 10 on there. You do the 6 on there. Let's say it's 200 square feet per car lot on there. You're at 1,200 square feet if you're at 6, and on a 10,000 square foot one, you're at 12%. You're getting to large numbers and lot coverage and such. I don't see that being as maybe as challenging if it was an attached ADU, but a detached ADU, which would be another 600 square feet on there. You might get very close to your lot coverage pretty quickly on there then too. So I have always been in favor of decreasing and trying to bring in more properties where a decrease in lot area for ADUs where it's appropriate. I think we just have to determine what's the appropriate cutoff right now then too, and we can massage that a little bit. So I don't.
So can I just add, does that
Please.
data exist from the zoning code amendment work group?
In terms of,
you know, where the lines are drawn, like does, you know, Jane had a different number than what was in the presentation, right? She was saying
it is a
that
different number.
that 37% of residential lots
Yeah,
are
more than half our lots are less than 1 acre, one
Right.
acre or less.
Is that town data or her data? Sorry.
That's town data
yeah.
provided by the planning department under Dan Gross.
Yeah, that's easy. I've seen that also.
And also
We
with
could pull
building
that.
permits. All of the data that Jane collected was from departments in the town and with planners. And that is her profession, actually.
So I'm interested in still having that discussion of decreasing the dimensional requirements for an ADU, but we might have to go into that. Is that okay, so I got a family of 6. We're all going to be driving on there, and very shortly I'm going to have 5 cars, and that's illegal for me. And I don't need an ADU. I just need for my family, right? That was.
But what size lot are you on?
I'm on 0.47.
So I think there's a big difference of having 5 or 6 cars on a builder's half acre versus on a 10,000 square foot
That's
lot.
what I was just going to go to on that is that if within this section of the code, do you have different parking regulations for different size lots if you have an ADU? Meaning, yeah, you know what, you're maximally out of 4 on an ADU. You know, you have to say that if it's a lesser degree, meaning square footage 10,000 or whatever it may be, if at your 0.47 or above or a half acre above, yes, maybe you can have 6 because that won't change that character of the neighborhood as much. What does it do? It does decrease exactly how many drivers you can have, but that's a determinant of the property owner and too. So I don't mind if we want to get that information, but I do want to try to see how we can incorporate this. If there's a demand, which I'm hearing, there's a demand for smaller lots on there. I want to try to find methodologies to try to meet that demand, but at the same time, not to put such a burden onto some of our smaller districts.
Can I just say, I thought the 4 cars per property was only when that property was a rental property.
No, it's a
that's
town
the code.
It's for,
Yeah, I can easily try to have it here.
I think in this
Parking,
case, if it has an ADU on
Yeah,
it.
it's off-street parking.
So it's probably the same for rentals too, like.
right.
You have to have a minimum of 2 spots. There's a
There's-
maximum of cars you can have.
Rob, we went through this, did we not? I feel like there's actually not a limit if you're the household occupant,
That's my,
but it's otherwise there is a limit.
that's
But if
my
you have an
point. If
ADU,
it's
then, yeah.
rental, then it's limited to 4. But if David's got 6 drivers, and 6 cars,
Oh,
he
that's
can
gonna be
do that
expensive for
because just think of the insurance.
I am thinking
Yeah.
of
Get your bikes, man.
insurance,
The
insurance, the cars.
homeowners, when you're the homeowner, you can have any number of cars. Okay, so it sounds like point 1 that generally speaking, the board is is open to decreasing the minimum lot area. The question is what's that number? And that we're looking for some more detail and analysis in order to make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, would we be supportive of a lesser amount now, or we just need more information?
I think-
Because I could commit to something that allows for more, but maybe doesn't go all the way to 10,000 just for the sake of progress. One thing we can pull, Joanna, I'd ask you to maybe look at the CDLI applications that got rejected, and if there were some that were very close, because I would hate for lots to be 19,000 square feet, and we all agree that that will be okay, and not make any progress because we don't want to go to 10. And so 15, 18, I think that we could probably settle on that. And in my mind, it's going to be hard to pull data that shows, I mean, I think that we want to create opportunities as long as we're not creating problems. And so if we identify a certain lot size as not being problematic, I don't really care if there's other lots that could take advantage. Why restrict those? I do think we want to be careful not to cause problems. So anyway, I think this point might be one that we can move forward on more quickly and make a really big difference without going all the way if we could get consensus there.
Okay, so the next one is change the maximum number of vehicles permitted on a lot with an ADU from 4 to 6 to not overly restrict properties with ADUs.
So I'd be comfortable with that, but I think we might have to go to a smaller 6, maybe on 0.47 or where we're at right now, but 4 on if we do decrease on there.
So it's kind of like a sliding scale. If we decrease the minimum size, we're just going to be cautious about the number of.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult to live in a house and build a 1,200 square foot ADU and have a 6-car area, as David said, in terms of lot coverage on a 10,000 square foot lot. I think that's tough. So I'd like to see a number that would actually work for everyone, not, for the quality of life of the people living there and also for the community character. It's just 6 cars on a 10,000 square foot lot besides a house that is allowable, figure, I don't know, 1,700 just off the top of my head, then an additional 1,200 for the ADU, not counting in GFA, and then the 6 cars. That's going to create a lot of congestion.
Yeah, I'm generally supportive of this at the lot size that we have now. I think 6 cars is not excessive, and it makes sense. I think that the conversation becomes trickier if we reduce it a lot, but I don't see any problem with the sliding scale. I do think it's important to note here, I mean, Kate, you made good points there, which is maybe you can't fit all of this, but I think importantly, my understanding is the ADU committee has been looking at this in the context of as long as you follow all the other rules. And so we're not trying to allow people to overdevelop. I think the GFA is an important outlier there in terms of, that we should look at more closely. But otherwise, I think the setbacks, everything is the same. And so if someone can't fit it, they can't do it. We wouldn't be allowing those people to skirt those regulations that are constricting. So I'm supportive of this, and I don't see any problem with having a sliding scale if we're concerned on smaller lots, but generally going to 6, fully supportive.
When you say the GFA is a consideration, what do you?
Well, what I'm saying is I think that the context and why I've been so supportive and not knowing all the details of this general concept is that if you're allowed to have a development pattern that looks the same from a coverage, from a clearing, from an everything standpoint, why wouldn't we allow somebody to have an affordable, accessory dwelling unit?
I agree with that.
But what I'm saying is if we make a cutout for GFA that allows, I mean, Jane Marion said, 50% bigger, it's something to look out for. Are people able to then build a much larger house because there's an ADU in there, and then what happens if that house transfers?
That's the enforcement.
It's tricky.
Yeah, that's
well, it's not just enforcement. It's are we setting somebody up to?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If they decline to use the as-built house, then we're really going to cause people problems and expense by removing that part.
And we don't want to legislate that would allow for the creation of issues. And again, this came up a little bit with outbuildings of the recent zoning code stuff, but this would be a major impact because somebody might buy a house not knowing that, and then somebody says you can't, But anyway, I'm supportive of the.
Okay. So moving on to number 3, remove the requirement that the property be the property owner's primary legal residence in order to allow second homeowners to build ADUs. So you had mentioned that many second homeowners, do you have numbers of folks that have inquired and?
It's not something we've kept a specific record of, it's just knowing people who have called or, people I've had to tell that, sorry, you don't qualify for a rental permit for an ADU. It's not something we've quantified at this point.
It would be hard to get, I don't think this is a hard data thing, because we'd have to ask everybody, would you consider an ADU? I think it's going to be hard to find the data on this. What I would want to focus the conversation on, what's the concern? And I think that Joanne in her presentation said the concern, I think, was there might be more quality of life issues if there wasn't a full-time resident in the primary structure. I don't know. I'm in favor of this one, I think, because as long as we're regulating our ADUs, making sure they're used properly, then I don't see a problem with opening the door to somebody who has a house they don't live in full time.
So I think that goes back to the initial discussion for ADUs that we had a couple of years back. It all comes down to enforcement, either the permitting or the checks that either a building department or in combination with the housing, community housing office has to do and should do. Was one of the only reasons that I was favorable of this moving forward on there then too, because that then I think where I read between the lines here, if you have the primary property owner on the property, they're going to look after their property. I think you're more fearful of that property being commercialized if that property owner is not on there. But in making sure that that this program is not being taken advantage of, the next backstop, and the backstop is the town to actually inspect the properties.
You're correct. You're correct. Like the last meeting, we did say that in the year, I think it was 2023 meeting, the number one concern why they had this in place was the concern for the potential for absentee landlords. That's why I was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we also talked about, some of these homes are, owned by LLCs, and we don't even know, with second homeowners. We talked about lifting the corporate veil.
I just wanted to add one thing to note on this, though, is that you cannot have both an ADU rental permit and a rental registry number. So you cannot be renting the primary house as well as an ADU. So it has to be someone's weekend house or whatever if it's not their full-time residence.
Also,
So maybe we look at something that's not registered as an LLC.
So we currently get the names of the LLCs and the agent for the LLC. So we do have a name for every LLC we give ADU permits to.
Yeah. It's funny because I was supportive of this when we talked about this in November, but now I've been getting emails from a particular high-end residential builder who's now co-op ADU
and tiny home,
and the videos that we're receiving are not these properties or ADUs are not being used in that way. So it's just,
I did review that. I think that's not entirely correct. I think he's emphasizing the possibility of them, but it does clearly say on that website and video, ADUs have to adhere to what the town regulations and permits are. I think there's a slight danger there too of, because these are potentially looked at as higher end ADUs that people might build on their properties, that there's something wrong with them. Look, if people with wealth and nice properties wish to put luxury ADUs on their property for people to live in, provided they're still being year-round occupied and they're at the rent restriction, and it's a year-round town of East Hampton employee or resident, there's nothing wrong with that.
If you want marble or linoleum and the same thing, if you're charging the same rent, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I agree with what Tom just said 100%. And I think that this is an enforcement thing, and that's a separate conversation. I think we're talking about now is who should have the opportunity to build these. My assumption is that every ADU in East Hampton is going to be used properly. And if it's one on Further Lane or, someplace else, it doesn't matter to me as long as it's providing, an affordable house for someone who needs it.
So for me, it's use, if I just may ask on this. So do you have to be year-round? Does the tenant, so I see the tenant's legal domicile to sole legal residence, because one of my concerns is, is building a separate living quarters for your staff. But they would have to be, what requirements would that, if it's a seasonal staff and only work at the house, what would be the requirements of the tenant's requirements, and that they don't live anywhere else, That's one of the suggestions here, and you strengthen that language. And they have to work.
We just changed that.
There's currently no year-round residency requirement. Sorry.
Yeah.
Currently no year-round residency requirement for ADUs on residential properties, but if the lease is for less than 1 year,
Yeah.
they have to provide proof that the tenant is employed in the town of East Hampton.
And that was the
So
change.
that's
That's part of the
essentially, you can't just
2023
come out and
changes.
use it for a summer
they-
vacation spot.
Be employed by the homeowner?
Not necessarily, no.
But they could.
They could.
They
So
could.
my
There's nothing that-
private chef could live in my ADU.
There's nothing that addresses who employs you, it's just you have to be
So
employed
legal
within the town.
And sole legal residence while they're registered with the ADU. Because if someone is not, has, if someone travels with the family and is their private chef, then that would be their sole residence until they go to the next place with
Well,
their.
it's got to be permitted, it's got to be income restricted, and it's a job.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
I mean, I'm not really going to get upset if, someone that has the means that's employing people. I've been on properties and worked for people that have 20 people that work for them around the property. God bless, you did something right. If you want to provide housing, you're by means you're trying to provide housing. And if you meet this and you have the backstops and those safeguards that we started to look at in 23 are there, that's just what we have to do as a town. We have to enforce our code for compliance. And this is just another example of it.
Yeah, I always think of affordable housing for, the kind of the backbone of our community, the folks that, work in all the businesses in town, and maybe your teachers and maybe your police officers, and maybe hopefully would work for the town.
I know a teacher that, many that actually would rent their house summertime. They would move and be the property manager for the family on Further Lane in one of their ADUs, we want to say, before ADUs were there. That happens. So I don't think we can look at it and saying the rich getting richer on this one right now. I think however we get affordable housing there by our methodologies, we try to do that, but we have to make sure we enforce it.
So can we
Right.
just talk about enforcement? Like, what does that look like? And so let's just say you do. So is it the Office of Housing that goes out and does an annual inspection? You're going to get on people's property and you're going to be able to inspect that there's somebody living there. I mean, what's the mechanism
That
there?
has not been the practice.
It's in the building department,
The
hasn't it?
building department?
I don't know that they do annual inspections. We work closely with the building department in terms of when a C of O is issued for one of these, or when a building upon the issuance of a building permit for one of these, we're informed, we assign them a number. We don't give them a permit until a temporary C of O has been issued, and then they have to come to us for their rental permit in order for the final C of O to be issued. And what I've been doing since I've been at the Office of Housing, and we're keeping track of the expiration dates of each permit. It's an annual permit, and sending out a letter to people who are delinquent and getting them renewed. Actually referred one to ordinance because they didn't respond, and in order to renew your permit, all of the documentation has to be resubmitted for both the tenant and the landlord according to what the current regulations are. So if they're employed in the town of East Hampton, they have to show that. It has to be a current job. So if that changes within a year, again, that documentation has to be relevant at the time. We have a pretty good system right now in terms of checking in and getting everybody. We just went through kind of an outreach to everyone and checked on where the permits were and sent letters to all of those who were delinquent, got most of them, I would say. There may be a couple that are outstanding with whom I'm still talking to the owners. There are, issues where the tenant was out of the country or whatever, but they pretty much all have been responsive, and we have a system going forward where we would be on top of that. And again, I work closely with Allison in the building department to say, where is the status of this person? Have they come in for their final C of O? She checks with me before issuing a final C of O to make sure we have a shared database, so they make sure that the people have submitted and have received their rental permit.
Great. And so
Working
that's a
pretty well.
yearly renewal?
Sorry?
That's a yearly renewal?
Yes.
That's good.
$50.
I think the other thing related to the enforcement side is just like, we have to acknowledge there is a vast amount of illegal multiple housing in the town. Like it happens. We try as best as we can with code enforcement to address that. But like many departments, because of housing, we are somewhat under-resourced. So enforcement is going to be a continual challenging for all the housing options. But one advantage to this program is that because these will have gone through our building permit process, we understand there's going to be the structural safety elements for people renting them. The more of these we can put out there versus that illegal housing that's out there, the better off our residents are.
As long as we're not creating more illegal housing.
Yeah, I agree with what Tom just said. And I mean, I would suggest that we actually have a follow-up conversation that deals with the program generally in enforcement, because I think changing parameters is one conversation. You know, whether the program is working or we have enforcement mechanisms is a separate conversation. If it's not working for the ones we have, we probably shouldn't be doing it at all. And so I understand why the conversations are related, but I think that we should probably gather information and just go over the whole program separately and maybe not vote on this, but go through the, suggestions. And to David's points a minute ago, I mean, we live in a service community, a lot of the jobs are service related. And so if a homeowner has staff living on site, and that's a person who otherwise works in town and would be living someplace, I think that's part of the need. I think that's where the sole legal residence becomes very, very important, because what I think Kate's concern is valid, which is we don't want people popping in and out, we want it to be for somebody who's part of the community. And that may sometimes be seasonally, but it's the only place that they live. They're not here on weekends and then in Florida or wherever else. But I'm supportive of this for sure. I think second homeowners should be allowed to build.
Okay, so what is the consent? So obviously, Tom, you're supportive of that. David, are you supportive of allowing second homeowners?
Yes.
Kate?
Yep.
Ian?
Yes.
Okay, so that can go forward. Number 4 is add a requirement that a tenant must either be a family member of the owner or a resident, meaning someone who lives in the town of East Hampton. Is everybody supportive of that?
Yes.
I'm fully supportive. The only thing I want to note is that the language about a contractor's license, I don't think that should count as work here.
Yeah.
That's a new addition, I think, that has been, and I understand why it might have been added, but I would rather take a conservative approach here, because I think people could just get a license and not be from here and never do any work.
And we have 70,000 contractors.
Right, yeah. So I just want to, that was important language. I think Stripe, it just lives or works in East Hampton without the contractor language. I'm fully supportive.
Okay. David?
Sure.
Okay.
Tom, is that?
Yeah, no, I acknowledge that.
Unless I'm missing something about,
I think it's, I think they need to show more evidence.
and they could have a contractor license, but also have, this came up, I'm aware of this
Yeah,
because
no,
it's
I think
something else I'm
that's
part of it.
Okay. And lastly, change the rule that the ADU be the tenant's legal domicile to sole legal residence to make it clear that a tenant should not have other housing. And that's something that's gone through the town attorney's office? Rob, that's, okay. Is everybody good with that?
Yep.
Yeah, to me, this is the cornerstone. I mean,
Yep.
it shows that the housing's going to the
Okay,
right
so is it in the code you mentioned? So you can't have an ADU and a rental registry permit?
Correct.
Is that already stated in the code?
It is.
Okay, so I think that we just need to, it looks like 3, 4, and 5, everybody's supportive, so we just need to have you folks come back with a little bit more data, and we need to kind of fine tune where the line is drawn as far as the size of the lot area. And then whatever where that line is drawn will determine, I think, how a sliding scale might work for small lots for number of cars. Is that what we've all agreed to?
I mean, I'll look into it. We'll see.
Okay, sounds good. All right, beautiful. Joanne, thank you.
Thanks, Joanne.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so now we're going to go, Rob, you're up to talk about proposed amendments to Chapter 25 Code of Ethics.
Good. Thank you very much. There are 3 amendments to Chapter 25 that the town draft. amendments, and one other was previously discussed, I believe, back in September. I'm going to start with the two new amendments. The first is the town ethics code requires that any member of a municipal board, which includes the governing boards and the administrative boards, be bound by the town's conflict of interest policy and submit a financial disclosure form at the end of each year. Over the past couple of years, the town board has created two new boards, or one board and one committee, the Community Housing the Community Housing Advisory Board and the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. Now, because these two, I'll call them boards, make recommendations to the town board regarding the disbursement of funds, it makes sense that members of both the CHAB and the Water Quality Committee should be bound by the conflict of interest provision of the ethics code and be required to submit a financial disclosure form at the end of the year. The second proposed change, which actually is the last change in the memo, is regarding of the ethics board. As the code currently reads, this is 25-11 Board of Ethics Powers and Duties, Section K, Advisory Opinions. It currently reads, a request for an advisory opinion shall be confidential, but the Board of Ethics may publish such opinions provided that the name of the requesting person and other identifying details are not included in the publication. The Board of Ethics shall endeavor to the extent practicable publish its advisory opinions so as to assist town officers and employees in complying with the applicable laws. The proposed change would read as, a request for an advisory opinion shall be confidential. However, the Board of Ethics shall publish such opinions, provided that the name of the requesting person and other identifying details are not included in the publication. The Board of Ethics shall publish its advisory opinions so as to assist town officers and employees in complying with applicable laws. An advisory opinion which concerns an individual employee shall be forwarded to the town's Human Resources Department to be included in that employee's personnel file. I think the reasoning behind this is clear, that if an employee gets an opinion that is contrary to how they're behaving, and they continue to do that after the opinion is issued, they should be disciplined for that. And I think that the only way that you can do that is if there's a personnel letter in their file.
Mm-hmm.
And something else that Mr. King has brought to my attention, which I don't think is necessarily needs to be codified, but should be a policy, is that when an individual applies for a position with the town of East Hampton and comes in for an interview, they should be given at that interview a copy of this chapter of the code. And they should also sign off, stating that they did receive a copy at the interview. So this way, there's no question as to whether or not they know what the conflict of interest policy is if they do accept employment with the town.
Rob, just on that one, I understand that for town employees, but I think one of the issues we've had discussions around is board members, appointed board members, and conflicts of interest there, and appearance of conflict of interest. Is this something that would apply to them as well with this?
Yes.
It would. Okay.
Okay.
And they would,
Go ahead.
and it would be an annual review for them to kind of sign this ethics.
Financial disclosures.
Yeah, they do financial disclosures every year. So you could give them a copy of it just to refresh their memories that they've received it.
Or at least at first appointment, so that they, at first appointment, I think once you know it, you should know it.
Yeah,
But
or if it gets revised.
yeah.
So Rob, there was one other.
Yes. This was discussed, I believe, back in September at our work session. Chapter 25, A1, certain actions prohibited, states that no municipal officer or employee shall directly or indirectly solicit any gift or accept or receive any gifts of value of $75 or more, whether in form of money, service, loan, travel, payment, hospitality, thing or promise in any form under circumstances in which it could reasonably be inferred that the gift was intended to influence him or her, or could reasonably be expected to influence him or her in the performance of his or her official duties, or was intended as a reward or for any official action on his or her part. And I think you're probably all invited to events at which the cost to attend these events are much more than $75. And I think as members of the town board, the community expects you to attend these events so that you can carry out your official duties, so you can network with individuals, make connections. But that limitation stymies your ability to attend a charitable event or a political event. And unless I'm wrong, none of you are titans of capitalism, so you can't all just write checks for $2,500 to attend an event.
Yeah, it's slightly problematic, this one for me, and I'm just going to say why, which is that I acknowledge, yes, those kind of events we should be going to, but like, it's a very limited person who, as you say, can afford a $2,500 check. So automatically by being there, you are effectively ensconced in a kind of very specific group of people. And, I'm not sure that to me sits somewhat uneasy. I think that cap, needs to be acknowledged and, maybe raised potentially from the 75 or whatever it is. But I think at a certain point that has to be very clearly recorded and capped off in a certain, after a certain point, I would be uncomfortable if you're talking about a $2,500 ticket to something like, no.
Yeah, I will say that the majority of the ticket prices that I think are around $250 that we get invited to. And, you could be invited to 2 of those events in a weekend or more. And I couldn't afford to be able to attend those events. And, but if I'm comped, I can attend and show support for, a food pantry, a childcare not-for-profit, domestic violence shelter. I mean, these are things that we get invited to, or I get more invitations as the supervisor. Historical society programs that, I could never afford to attend, but my presence and our presence is requested. So,
I'm sorry, Kathy.
and I don't think going to an historical society event, it's going to change my perspective on anything as far as like, I don't know what the nexus would be, as far as some of these organizations we give grant funding to, but that is a process that is done publicly. We have 2 or 3 work sessions on our annual budget. We have a public hearing, we discuss. So I don't think it's, because I get invited to an event that I'm going to give them more grant money the following year. That's a town board decision. So
I think potentially it would maybe be a cleaner system if we budgeted for this and said annually, look, the supervisor is expected to go to this many events, and this is a line item that can be monitored and recorded.
I don't feel comfortable using taxpayers' money for this.
Because the reality is that the $250 ticket, it might only be costing them $75, and the remaining funding is, their fundraiser. That's how they're raising their funds.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to. Tom, I wholeheartedly agree with your concerns, and I like Kate. I wouldn't want it to be a taxpayer burden, but I understand the concern here. But to Kathy's point, I think that a lot of times the value received. The ticket's the price. The price of the ticket is the price of the ticket. But if you go for a half hour and it was some concert, you're not consuming or taking personal wealth out of that. So I understand the concerns, but I think the Ethics Committee was okay with this one, at least for a single ticket, and I would be too, because I think a lot of times the food pantry example is a very good one. If there's a $2,000 ticket to support a food pantry, it's to raise money, not because the people are getting that much value out of it. And it would be, I think it's appropriate for board members to attend.
But just so you know, the food pantries aren't charging $2,000 a ticket. It's more in the $150 to $250 range.
And, the state officers and employees they're generally prohibited from soliciting or accepting gifts of more than nominal value from individuals and entities that do business in the state of New York, but there are some exceptions. State officers or employees who are covered under the gift regulations may accept complimentary attendance, including food and beverage at certain events and functions, provided specific conditions are met. one, that's a bona fide charitable event, or two, that's a bona fide political event. And the City of New York, in an advisory opinion, their conflict of interest board, in opinion 2000-4, found it permissible for an elected official or a member of his or her staff authorized by him or her to attend as part of his or her official duties a function of an organization composed of representatives of business, labor, professions, news media, or organizations of a civic, charitable, or community nature when invited by the sponsoring organization, regardless of the price which the public may be charged for a ticket to the event, and regardless of whether his or her office provides funding for that organization. The board there also further found that in the same opinion, that an elected official or a member of his or her staff is permitted to accept one complimentary guest ticket without running afoul of the law. So it would be my proposal, which is the same proposal from back in September, that at the end of section 25A1, that we just add the following sentence: notwithstanding the foregoing, shall be permissible for a municipal officer or employee to attend as part of his or her official duties a function of an organization composed of representatives of business, labor, professions, news media, or organizations of a civic, charitable, or community nature. Sorry, I lost my page. When invited by the sponsoring organization, regardless of the price which the public may be charged for a ticket to the event, and regardless of whether his or her office provides funding for that organization, and shall also be permissible for the municipal officer or employee to accept one complimentary guest ticket.
Okay. I do have a question, and that is on the advisory opinions, where, I mean, I don't recall in the almost 12 years that I've been here that an advisory opinion has been published with the identifying details removed. What is the mechanism, and how would it be published? I don't know if that's a question for Carol as the liaison to, or the secretary to the ethics board. In your time, have you published advisory opinions? Okay.
I think the issue.
My question would be, as a secretary, what do you mean by public?
Well, that was my.
Newspaper, or maybe then you're going to be adding.
Yeah, or to the website, or to the, you know what I mean? Yeah, to all employees. I mean, I don't know how that would. Yeah.
My understanding of this, and I might be wrong, so feel free to correct me, was that internally, we might not, the department head might not know that a staff member had an opinion given that might affect their job. And so how do we make sure that we know? Maybe going to the personnel file is enough. Because, yeah, I don't think we want to publish in the paper or broadly, but we do want to make sure that we have an understanding of opinions that have been given so that we know, you know,
if there's compliance.
Right, exactly. And maybe it comes up again, you know, a situation today comes up that was already addressed last year. We never got that opinion. And so we, you know, run afoul again.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know the mechanism, but it seems like we should have this information internally as a town, but, you know, not published broadly.
Yeah. And the recommendation here is to have it go to the person's personnel file. And obviously the intro is that it's all kept confidential. I mean, yeah, so maybe if that's not a practice we've been doing. And how many years have you been associated with the ethics board? So, yeah.
Well, in the personnel file, anybody who needed to have the information internally would have access. What's that? If it was in the personnel file, would anybody who might, you know, a department heads, for example, that person worked under, or us, we'd have access to that information or no?
Sometimes we don't even know that the request has been made for, you know what I mean? Because the request for the advisory opinion is confidential.
Would the emphasis be on the ethics board to advise the town board if they see a concern?
So if they've issued an opinion and they said, let's just say, you can't do that action.
Yes.
And they get word that they are taking that action, that
there's some kind of mechanism in place. I mean, I don't know. Rob, is that?
What, if someone breaks these ethics laws, what is the,
What's a misdemeanor under the code? Whether or not anybody would ever actually be prosecuted for that, I don't know. But a misdemeanor is a misdemeanor. It's punishable by up to 1 year in jail. Or
that's public, right? Public proceeding?
Mhm.
So then if, say this wasn't the town, but another organization, a private corporation, would employers be informed of anyone's, I mean, are we supposed to be informed of the alleged breaking or the actual, it happened and someone got a misdemeanor?
You mean if they actually break the ethics code and they're prosecuted?
Yeah.
I mean, it would have to be the town who would have to prosecute.
So we'd be notified.
Prosecution is going to be pretty unlikely. The real thing is just, do we know the ethics opinions?
Right.
Yeah, I think maybe even the mechanism is that from the Board of Ethics, if they have a concern, they approach Town Attorney's office, and Town Attorney's office gives the board the legal advice accordingly in exec. And if action needs to be taken, we would then recommend it accordingly.
I mean, look, I, in spirit, I'm supportive. I think that we should, the ethics opinion should mean something, and so people should know of them who need to know. It's obviously delicate, so I think we need to refine this a little bit, but I'm supportive in spirit for sure. And I think to Carol's point, we just have to be careful with the word published. I don't think we're trying to do this broadly, but I think having an idea of what the ethics committee has come back with, honestly, even positive, so that we know they think something's okay that might be questionable.
Yeah,
I just don't know how to do that best.
It's educational for all of us if we understood what the opinions were.
So maybe more work to be done.
Yeah, I think Becky's coming down, our town administrator, because she's the one that had brought up this request to have, the opinions go into the HR.
All right, let's get ready. Come on.
All right, come on down, Becky.
Wow.
So obviously Becky's been, as she always does, listening into the town board work session. So do you want to help us through this piece?
Sure. Becky Hansen, Town Administrator. Good thing I didn't wear heels today running down here. I am a little out of breath.
Response time is impressive.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the goal of that provision is the way the ethics code currently reads, and I'm not speaking verbatim, but I think I'm close, is that if an employee seeks an opinion from the ethics board, the ethics committee, the committee may share that opinion. The concern that we have with human resources is that if an employee does receive an opinion that may say, okay, my job is X, and let's say I have outside employment that I do, A and B. Does my daily job, is there a conflict with me still performing A and B, having a certain position with the town? And if the ethics committee came back and said, yes, we do feel that that is could be an ethics issue, you should no longer be employed doing A and B, the town under the code has no idea that that opinion has been issued and whether or not the employee is complying with the findings of the ethics committee, which then if the employee is still engaging in that behavior, that would affect their employment in theory with the town, that they are violating what the ethics committee found could be an ethics violation by them having, again, using the example, as certain outside employment. So that is the goal of that provision, to amend it that the ethics committee can share those opinions that would remain confidential with town human resources, just so the town is able to make sure that the employee is abiding by what that opinion is, as it could affect their employment status with the town. It would not be shared publicly. Again, personnel files are confidential, only available to, human resources and the employee themselves.
So Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom.
So the requirement would be that obviously on their application form, they would have to self-report what this other employment is, annually kind of do that. Is the implication then that this would be flagged to the ethics committee to then be reviewed and say, we see that as a conflict of interest, or how would that determination?
The idea would be when someone is applying, okay, let's say a new employee, that they are applying for a position, that they would disclose if there's any outside employment. And I believe the ethics committee has talked about, with pre-employment, Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would be ideal that all employees, and we do ask them to note that, but they don't always do that, so that in that pre-hiring process, that if there is some outside employment, that it would be disclosed prior. Perhaps they do seek, an opinion from the ethics committee, and then we deal with it then. Or if you have a current employee that does have, again, the usual example is outside employment. If you have outside employment, they should be self-reporting, ideally, that, okay, I have this particular position with the town, and maybe I have a construction company, or I have a property management company, or selling real estate. Those are just a number of examples that we do see, and that performing that outside work is not going to be an ethics violation with their day-to-day job with the town of East Hampton. So again, ideally they would be self-reporting, or if the member of the town board is aware, or someone that, someone is performing some type of outside work that may be a conflict of their position with the town. And again, that employee then goes to the ethics committee to seek an opinion on that particular outside employment. Again, if it's found there is an ethics concern or violation, again, under the current town code, the board or human resources were not aware that employee may or may not be violating the ethics code.
Right, and the part that I think is crucial is that it's a totally separate board from the town board that's making it's
completely independent. Yep.
Yeah, independent board that's making the determination on whether something's in violation of the town ethics code.
Yes.
So the piece that was that came up was that a request for an advisory opinion shall be confidential. The new language is, however, the Board of Ethics shall publish such opinions. To your knowledge, I mean, Carol's been doing this for a decade. My 12 years there, I've never seen a published advisory opinion.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So maybe it shouldn't be shall, so maybe it's a request, but however, the Board of Ethics may publish such a,
that's what the
go
code.
back to.
May publish, and then maybe that provide a confidential copy to the town's Department of Human Resources to be placed in the employee's personnel file.
The code reads 2511K 3. A request for an advisory opinion shall be confidential, but the Board of Ethics may publish such opinions, provided that the name of the requesting person, other identifying details are not included in this publication. The Board of Ethics shall endeavor, to the extent practicable, to publish its advisory opinions so as to assist public officers and employees in complying with applicable laws.
So ideally, again, what we're seeking from the Human Resources perspective is that opinion is shared with the town Department of Human Resources in a confidential manner to be kept in the employee's personnel file, which again is confidential because again, we don't know if an employee is complying with the terms that are set forth in an opinion from the ethics committee.
So I think we want to go back to the original language in the first two sentences, because we don't want to say that they shall publish it. It's may, and it's to the extent practicable. The problem is that it doesn't say publish where or how.
Shall record it, perhaps, instead of publish, shall record it.
Well, maybe it published to the Human Resources Department.
Okay.
What it sounds like even the current code encourage us to do this when we're not
doing
jeopardizing confidentiality. Why don't we just have a Board of Ethics page with opinions, or something like that, where we could access previous opinions and.
So it could be
like on the website, if you want to go figure out what the opinions have been, you can go and.
Which under the code, those would be redacted. But
yeah,
again,
of course.
Human Resources, we would want a unredacted.
Right.
Confidential, a copy that would be kept confidential, because again, we don't know if an employee is complying with the terms of the
Or even if it weren't redacted, just generalized, like you can do this kind of work and hold this position without the details, but I don't know how practical that would be. The only thing I have a question out of is confidential in the Human Resources Department. Who is it confidential to? Could a department head whose staff member that was have access to that or no?
Not necessarily.
So I wonder if we're achieving our goal there of making sure.
No, I mean, it would be, again, personnel files are confidential and to be viewed, human resources and the employee themselves. If a member of the public foiled somebody's personnel file, they might get their civil service application with, their address and their cell phone number redacted, but nothing else in there they would be privy to. And especially if you specify within the code that document, is confidential.
I'm comfortable with how the code is, and if what we're trying to do is make sure that staff members or potential employees are double checking that and having a means to do it through our Chapter 25, I think it's easiest just to end up saying, specifically state where that copy would go to, under whose authority and review, and that's it. I'm still comfortable with the may, not the shall.
Yeah. I mean, again, the publishing is one component of it. The other component is.
Which was, Rob drafted as a separate line. An advisory opinion which concerns an individual employee shall be forwarded to the town's Human Resources Department to be included in that employee's personnel file. So Rob, we're going to go back to the original language in the first two sentences and then keep the new line about HR. And then I think we can put this on for public hearing on Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Becky.
Great, you're welcome.
Appreciate you joining us. All right, so what happened?
Did we finish the last part, the gift thing? I think, Tom, you had concerns. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not comfortable with it, but that's okay. We can still go to public hearing.
And the only thing I have a question there is there was the additional ticket, and I think that the Board of Ethics was in favor of waiving the limit for individuals, but not for an additional. My personal situation is different, so I understand the difficulty that provides, but I have a hard time going against the opinion of the committee, even though it's ultimately our choice there. So I'm certainly in favor of raising the amount, but I don't know about the second part of that. I don't know.
We'll hear it. I mean, I know for instance, in my experience, there have been weekends where I have attended 9 events in a weekend from Friday night to Sunday night. If I didn't bring my spouse or, sometimes an adult child, young adult comes with me, I wouldn't see my family.
No, I get it.
So I don't think that it compromises, our position on something. Like I said, anytime we want to give grant funding to any organization, it goes through a number of work sessions. It goes out for public hearing. So I don't see the nexus. And sometimes I think my spouse is more popular than I am when I go to an event. Okay, so we're through our topics, and so we're up to liaison reports.
Thank you. One moment. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee will meet next Monday at the Amagansett School, 6:30 p.m. in the school library. IT, we continue to be in our beta testing phase of IT right now for the building, fire marshal, code enforcement offices. If anyone has interest in being involved in that beta testing, please reach out to myself or the IT department or the building departments accordingly. Human services, reminder, it's gone on today already, but blood pressure screening is on the first Tuesday of every month at the Senior Center. We also have morning Zumba, which has been a great success. We've added Zumba, afternoon Zumba, which begins this week. It's tomorrow at 2 p.m. There is senior transportation available for those interested. If you would need more information, call 631-324-4443.
Can I ask you a question? ACAC is going to meet the first Monday of the month?
I'm sorry, second Monday.
Okay, so that it's not, your ACAC
Right,
isn't.
I apologize, yes. 2 weeks
Isn't the 7th, it's the 14th.
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Tomorrow, Wednesday, 2nd of April, will be the first meeting of the Mindfulness Club, head by our Senior Citizen Club leader. It will be at 10 a.m. To integrate wellness practices in your life. We also have our arts and crafts scheduled for every Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. And then additionally, I just wanted to highlight one of the grants we do give as a town is to an organization, The Retreat. Anne-Marie, if you could pull this up again, that would be great. They are hosting a series of webinars on Zoom from 12 p.m. to 12:45 p.m. Wednesday, April 19th, there is a one on digital boundaries, navigating screens, social media, and online safety. Wednesday, April 23rd, there will be one on cultivating healthy relationship, differentiating between healthy and unhealthy relationship behaviors. And Wednesday, May 7th, there will be a talk on Survivor Speaks, hear from a survivor of domestic violence who shares their personal journey. I also know this organization has done presentations to our senior center, and they've been very warmly received and doing a phenomenal job. If you wish to learn more, there is a QR code on the screen. You can scan with your phone to get more information. A reminder to people that recycling stickers are due. It's April. You are able to purchase these from the town clerk's office and the Montauk Annex Monday through Friday. If you need to get one on the weekend, the only location you can currently do that is at the Sanitation Center on Springs Fireplace Road. Brooks Park, just to update my board members here, the Brooks Park board did return their proposal for a possible license agreement. I will be reviewing that with the attorney's office, land management department, and presenting to you accordingly. Licensing review board, we met last week to discuss possible licensing review board procedural improvements. We're doing a comparison with operations in other towns on the East End, and just kind of looking to potentially change a few elements to provide better protections to town residents. Such things as right now there's an issue, they feel there's too many postponements going on. They also would like to, a lot of postponements going on, people either canceling or just pushing out the meetings, and like how many postponements should a hearing actually be allowed. They also noted that in the past there was actually a small budgetary amount to allow them to advertise, what the LRB does and who it serves. That's something we might want to consider going into 2026 too, as we do the budget there.
Also push it out on social media.
Yep.
I mean, we've got.
Yep, exactly. It's
6,000 plus followers, I think, on Instagram.
East End Fire Commissioners, just kind of raised two things here. I mean, one thing we talked previous meetings about the importance of our emergency services out there and the challenges they have in recruiting. One thing you are seeing as we get these daily FRES reports with regard to this is when there is a fire now, you are typically seeing 9 mutual aid agencies go in to respond to it. That is because it's very hard for these firehouses to get crews out. And, with the fire risk being as high as it is, they're taking it very seriously, but that's what's happening. We're seeing it in our own districts. So again, just as we, watch this and consider what we can do, the community do consider signing up for that. I also want to just highlight with regards to that some training opportunities that are going on, both for like EMS and for fire departments out there. Suffolk County is hosting a meeting for all EMS instructors today, April 1st, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. at the location at 360 Yaphank. Suffolk County REMSCO, there's also the Thomas Laudier Memorial EMS Conference, Saturday, April 26, 2025. For those of you who did know Tom, he's an absolute legend in that field. REMSCO is also taking applications for the CPR Life Saving Award ceremony. This is one of the most amazing things people can do in their lives. If you know anyone who's been involved in a CPR Life Saving Award ceremony, they can go to the Suffolk REMSCO website and make a nomination on the CPR Life Saving Award nomination link. Any questions, you can reach out to me on that. And then finally, fire service update in this realm. Just to let you know, there's an engine company operations course at Bayport Fire Department today at 7 p.m. There's also a terrorism awareness and activity reporting for fire, EMS, and fire police classes Monday, April 21st at West Hampton Beach. Special events, just kind of one thing that, just to call out to people as we get these applications in, signage, it has to adhere to town code. Even on private property and temporary signage, there are specific regulations as to what those are. Please ensure as you do signage for your events, you're adhering to those. Public safety, as noted kind of last year, we were in the public safety calendar of April. The alert this month is for severe weather and specifically flood safety. So Anne-Marie, if you want to just bring up, it's a graphic more than anything else, but this is from FEMA, what you should know about flood safety. Make a family emergency communication plan that includes your pets, have emergency supplies in place at home, at work, and in the car, checking in your neighbors to make sure they're okay, know what to do before and after the flood. Flood insurance takes 30 days to take effect, so please purchase now to protect your family. Listen to local officials by radio, TV, or social media. Evacuate when advised by authorities, or if you live in a flood or flood-flown prone area. If you're on high ground above flooded areas, be prepared to stay where you are, as you may be your best protection. And finally, never drive or walk through flooded streets. Turn around, don't drown. Do not go through flood waters. Ironically, I was thinking back, it was around this time last year we had that big flood out in Montauk. So
Memorial Day
it's that time of year, yeah. Disabilities Advisory Board, we met last week. One bit of feedback that did come back from that committee is they have noticed in quite a few of our town parking lots that the ADA parking spaces are not according to ADA code. Such things as the unloading area doesn't allow a cutout to let people up onto ramps. They've just asked as we go forward with any parking plans if they could just have visibility to what the ADA parking is in any lots. Arts Council Committee, they will be hosting an event on June 12th at LTV, a CNN panel discussion to discuss arts in the Hamptons and what can be done to strengthen that community. And then last but not least, penultimate, emergency preparedness, we continue to review the FEMA plan questions. I actually shared those with my colleague, Councilman Lease, this morning. There's a few areas we continue to work on, some we've completed. So just reading through the categories that we are addressing with this plan. Communications, it has been completed. Continuity, we are still working on with town administration and the East Hampton PD and the town emergency preparedness coordinator. Energy is one we need to kind of discuss as a board at some point in the future. Financial management has been completed. Firefighting, I'm working with both the fire marshal and the fire districts on. Similarly for hazardous materials. Law enforcement, the police department is working on. Logistics and resource management is one we'll need to work with the town administrator on. Mass care, the emergency preparedness coordinator needs to give us feedback on. Mutual aid, multi-jurisdictional coordination has been completed by the town attorney's office. Private sector coordination is one I think we should discuss as a town board. And then protective actions and public alert warning are being worked on by East Hampton Town PD. Public information has been completed by our public information officer. Public works and engineering infrastructure has been completed by the Department of Highways. Recovery as a community we need to discuss as a board. Search and rescue has been completed by East Hampton Town Police. Transportation and volunteer donations management. Volunteer and donations management, I would like to reach out to the public if there's any members who are interested in being involved in helping coordinate what that might look like in the event of an emergency. Please do reach out to my office. Lastly, tick control. We had an excellent presentation last Friday by Dr. Scott Campbell of Suffolk County Department of Health. It was regarding the tick life cycle. For those who are interested in seeing it, is available in the minutes of our committee meeting. Just in terms of learning more about tick life cycles, periods of heightened risk, mitigation methods, range of areas, encourage you to watch and learn the presentation. Dr. Campbell did also note that he is available for presentations at libraries, public institutions, schools as needed. Please feel free to reach out to him or my office if you cannot contact him. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. David?
This past Friday, I attended New York Sea Grant and also Cornell Cooperative Extension Seafood Summit, the New York State Seafood Summit. I attended with John Dunn, Department Head of Aquaculture. Here, there were panelists that included Amanda Jones from Inlet Seafood and others, along with County Legislator Welker and Suffolk County's Executive Ed Romaine. A lot of the discussions surrounded increases in needs for shoreside infrastructure, including ice houses and food processing locations, potentially localized closer to potentially a riverhead in those areas then too. It was a great discussion. At that time, I got to meet the Director of Marine Resources from the DEC, Martin Gary, among others then too, and I have invited them out to the township for a tour of our marine resources out here also then too. Sarah Lansdale, who's in economic development for Suffolk County, also alerted the individuals there that they're putting out a working waterfront survey. This is to survey individuals that have waterfront properties and commercial properties to find out what do they offer, what is needed on there then too. That survey will be coming to us shortly, and we'll try to put it out to our socials to get a robust response for that from the East End also then too. There was discussions there also about aquaculture spawning also, and that is also currently still happening within our Department of Aquaculture then too. I had a conversation with Tim Watson, New York State Parks. They are preparing to accept the lowest responsible bidder for net peak fire reduction, and that would be as far as creating the burn piles. So they're still on track with these timelines and also funding, trying to receive all the funding needed in the state budget for this, and to stay on this time frames and timelines that were presented a couple months ago in Montauk, just to let everyone know that. As far as East Hampton Town lifeguards, please continue to sign up your children for the Nipper Guard program and also evaluations for lifeguards. And if you're interested in lifeguarding for the town of East Hampton, please contact the Recreation Department at 631-324-4141. East Hampton Little League opening day is upcoming this month. I want to thank the Buildings and Grounds Department for working with the Little League, and I believe they should have completed all our Little League fields as far as adding more clay to the interior of the diamonds for safe play. Again, a lot of people have been practicing over at Stephen Hand's Path also then too. If you're interested in playing Little League, contact East Hampton Little League at their website then too. But I think opening day, I believe, is coming up on April 25th. I'll confirm that with the town board and a time frame and everyone there. Cantwell Court, I want to let everyone know that the infrastructure, Suffolk County Water Authority has completed the installation of water there, and we're working with PSE&G for the installation of the power there, and then we'll complete that road. I'm anticipating that we would like to come back to a town board to discuss the RFP and other decision placement processes potentially in May here, Supervisor, and I'll get that onto your pencil into the agenda there then too. I want to let everyone know about Stephen Hand's Path multi-use field is moving forward at a rapid pace right now, and they should be completing a lot of their drainage this week and also start to get ready for concrete work then too. So that's still happening over there. And again, it's not interfering with any of the parking, as all the mobilization is taken care of in the areas on the fields then too. I want to let everyone know an update about the Montauk Harbor cap dredge project, which is slated to happen in the end of this year here. First of all, the harbor's, the tips of the harbor is actually already shoaling in again. So I've been told by fishing captains. A lot of northwest winds have been blowing and a lot more sand in there. But again, the dredging project there's a couple critical pathways there. One being engineering, that's Army Corps, one being funding by the Army Corps. The other one was receiving our easements for multiple properties that are not in the town's ownership. Those easements have been received as of last week then too, and they will be filed with the county clerk hopefully this week, if not already then too. So that's a milestone moment for this project that the town had to take care of. I want to thank everyone in the town that assisted myself with receiving those, and also to the property owners that donated those easements. We closed on the former Cheryl's Dairy property. That's at the almost at the confluence of Springs Fireplace Road and 3 Mile Harbor. It's about 20.5 acres there. And two, as you heard, the town will be going out to an RFP for our farmers wanted in the coming weeks here then too. But the town land management is going to be working on mowing some of those fields to get rid of some of the woody invasives, and there's some other work that has to be done because there's some invasives that have grown up in the field properties, and also some tree work on there then too. So more information to come on that, and as land management is doing their boundary assessments of the property then too. Again, it's another day in which the town is protecting our agricultural history, as we have to within the town comprehensive plan and one of our goals. Lastly, spring paving has started already, and it started in Montauk, downtown Montauk, where they're milling and going to be paving. They're milling a lot of the areas in the Central Business District on their Steve Lynch, Superintendent Highways, and Terry Nesbitt out there. They're looking to try to complete this year, as they did in the fall and the spring of last year, much of the paving in the downtown business area. I have alerted the Chamber of Commerce already of this, the timing, and then also the milling and the paving, which we think might happen next week on their weather dependent, of course. And again, I thank the Highway Department and then also the businesses for their knowledge of the potential inconveniences there to some parking. In the end, everything will be striped, and that includes 88 parking spots too. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you, David. Kate?
Yes, I'll start out with a report on the No Spring Fling event that the Litter Action Committee held last week. The members of the East Hampton Litter Action Committee went to Maidstone Park on Saturday morning for the first kickoff of the No Spring Fling spring events. We were joined by the members of the East Hampton Sportsman Alliance, the Spring Citizens Advisory Committee, and as well as neighbors in Springs. And I want to thank everybody for their endeavor. A report is that hundreds of beer bottles and cans, hard seltzer, iced tea, water, and soda cans, lunch containers, coffee cups, napkins, knives, forks, and spoons were included in the 15 bags of litter collected. These environs that were picked up surrounding the parking lots, including the trails leading from the parking lots and the ball field and from the playground to the bay. And these were found to be favorite spots for bottles and can tossings. There was also the ubiquitous finding of socks, hundreds of cigarette butts, cigarette lighters, energy drinks, bottle caps, and teeth flossers, and that joined the car tire in the assortment of stuff found in the beautiful landscape of our cherished park. There's a special thank you from the LAC to the Maidstone Market for rewarding the participants for their efforts with bagels, empanadas, and beverages after yet another litter adventure. The next one will be the scheduled pickup is at Springs Fireplace Road, April 5th at 10 a.m. Meet at Grant Avenue, where you can choose your very own vest and litter grabber, or just organize a litter pickup of your own. Creating a litter-free East Hampton is easy. Don't toss it, see litter, pick it up, cover your vehicle load. Please don't trash East Hampton. Also, the Montauk Resiliency Grant Steering Committee continues to meet on a weekly basis on Fridays. We have completed a review of the RFP going out for the consultants for this for task 1 and 2 and 3 of the project. We're now sending it to Jean Carrozza at Purchasing for adding the legal language that is required of the town. And then this week, David will be a guest of the steering committee, going over the any final suggestions for the RFP. Southwick Wind Farm, they are going to come back and repave Beach Lane because of some settlement. Folks may see some engineers out there doing some very small boring holes into the pavement. That is to study what's happening with the settling that's underneath. There's several different structures underneath. One is cement, and then next door to that is regular fill. So they're going to analyze the settling before they repave so that they can do the proper job on that within the time frame allowed. Finally, for this week, I will be speaking Friday. If you're at Stony Brook, College at the Student Activity Center, the SAC in Ballroom 1, there is the 2025 Long Island Youth Climate Summit. And this is hosted by the Student for Climate Action and Renewable Energy Long Island, and the theme is From Climate Science to Solutions to Policy and Career. So part of this will be some information on careers in sustainability. I'll be part of a group talking about the power of youth engagement in climate policy, and that will feature County Executive Ed Romaine, County Legislators Rebecca Satin and Steve Engelbright, Southold Town Supervisor Al Krupski, myself, and New York State Senator Monica Martinez. So please, if you would like to attend, just reach out to my office and I'll give you more details on how to become part of the solution. And that is all I have.
Great, thank you, Kate. Ian?
Yeah, I'd like to start by sharing some disappointing news, actually, which is that the town was not awarded the New York Forward Grant we've been talking about for the last year or so in Springs. And we did a debriefing with New York State to figure out why. And that's sort of a unique grant encouraging redevelopment and revitalization. And they made an emphasis to say it's not for typical municipal projects. They really want sort of, it was a difficult conversation because they're not telling us exactly what to do, and so it's a little bit vague. So the impressions I give, or I'm stating, will be a little editorialized, but it was my understanding of why we weren't awarded. They were looking for sort of mixed-use projects that included housing. Housing was a really big, which makes sense because you have to be a pro-housing community to be part of that. And they also made an emphasis of saying that the New York State wanted to be part of the planning process. And so I got the impression they were looking more for like, this is one example, be a dilapidated block that they could sort of really aggressively come in with unique solutions that wouldn't be your typical thing. So with all of that in mind, I think that this was, I can't emphasize enough how rewarding and encouraging that process was, starting with Samantha Klein and all the work she put in, but then there was really quick work from business owners and community members of Springs. And I think we talked about a lot of really good ideas. And at the end of the day, we asked for what we wanted. We were intentionally conservative based on the Springs Hamlet plan. The community didn't want, a massive new block of a mixed-use development. And so I don't regret not being more, we don't just want to seek money to do something. We want to do what our community wants to do. And so, is it whether we want to reapply for that in that area or perhaps someplace else in town if it's appropriate. But again, what I'm taking most from this is what great work and contributions there were from so many people, from answering the survey to letters of support. And I think that with the ideas we talked about, we can develop those further to benefit our community. So I think it was a very, a really constructive process. And again,
so let me just add and congratulate you on that, even not getting the grant, because it took us numerous times to we didn't get the resiliency grant on the first go, but that relationship that you're developing with the state and the encouragement that you'll get from that is all about how you're going to be successful in grants in the future. So that the exercise that you're thanking people for, I thank you for leading that, because that's really how you get those grants in the future.
Thank you, Kate. And again, that should all be passed really to Samantha Klein. She did most of the work, but I appreciate it. And also they open up the door to other grants that Sam probably already knows about, but there might be other opportunities. And overall, again, we'll revisit whether we, to Kate's point, they said a lot of people applied more than once before getting grants. We'll reevaluate knowing the criteria and why we didn't get it, whether there's a more appropriate or whether it's an appropriate thing for us to see. So, well, thank you. The Property Management Committee will meet tomorrow at 4:30. Typically we meet in this room. We're actually going to meet at the Wainscott Chapel in Wainscott because we do want to discuss the 66 Main Street property. That will be the main item on the agenda. The other item that we want to address is the Dodge management plan, the Dodge property, which is very, very close to being finalized. And hopefully that will be the last discussion at that level. And then I can bring it to the town board for a discussion. So at the Wainscott Chapel tomorrow, Wednesday at 4:30, the Property Management Committee. Ag Advisory Committee will meet next Thursday, April 10th. We're going to move the location of that committee's meetings to 300 Panic Panago Place. I will follow up with more details about the specific room. We meet on the second Thursday of every month based on people's availability, but what I've found is that it's hard to have a permanent home. And so for community members and members of the public who might want to join, I'm trying not to have it in different locations depending on space availability. There's a conference room at 300 Panago Place that I think we'll use. And again, I'll follow up with more details next work session. The Old Stone Culvert project that I hope people have noticed in Springs that started last fall, that will be finished, completed, beginning April 14th. It will be a bridge closure to replace the culvert there. And we asked the contractor to do it during a school break, which starts on April 14th, and very appreciative that they've accommodated that. There is a potential of up to 2 weeks of the road being closed. I hope it's quicker than that. Of course, we can't guarantee that, but at least the first week that the school will be out and hopefully people can adjust. I'll be reaching out to everybody who I think needs to know about this, but if any members of the public are listening and know people who travel those areas, Old Stone Highway, please let me know. On an encouraging note on that project, I've heard nothing but positive feedback on the Phragmite removal and the way that looks. I think that it's beautiful to have the view of the pond again, and very encouraged. And frankly, it's one of the rare times that I've only heard positive things on an impactful project like that. Usually you hear all sides. Along those lines, the Spring CAC met last month with nothing really new. It was a lot of updates on things that we've already discussed. The main thing that I would like to bring to the town board is Phragmite removal on Pussy's Pond. I think Phragmite is a big problem across town. Again, was very, very pleased with the removal we did as part of that project I just mentioned, but it's expensive. I had to dig up to 6 feet down to remove all the roots, and very, very expensive, and not really tenable to do that all around. I do wonder if we can do a cutting project on Pussy's Pond.
So we did that in the past on a cutting project, and sorry.
No, go for it.
So I did bring this up, I believe, to Natural Resources. One of the multi-tools that we purchased, the attachments for building the grounds, has a 14-foot articulating arm that can go out, that can cut into water. It's for hedge, and that's something that could probably be done relatively easy up to a certain distance away if you get the right permitting on it. Just to let you know, we have some equipment on there that could help.
I think that's great, and the main area that we want to focus on is the actual bridge of Pussy's Pond. I've actually heard people are afraid to walk across because you have to sort of go through this, which surprised me, honestly, because it's kind of, as invasive it is, it's kind of a pretty walk. But, there are DC permits involved. I have spoken with Natural Resources. I think the trustees, may need some. But I want to figure out a way to move forward on that, because I think that we're not going to be able to, I know we're not going to be able to remove all the Phragmite fully by digging down, and that's a much more invasive process. But I hope we can make a difference. And Dave, your feedback on the fact you've done that before is helpful. And I'd like to pursue it in that location and perhaps others. And this also ties back into, I think, the New York Forward Grant and Springs in general, improving parking in that area of Springs where there's festivals and farmers markets and various things. I found when I went to the Heart of Springs event last year that I parked near the school and walked across that bridge and probably was closer than many people. And it was a very safe, beautiful walk. And I think that by opening this up, and maybe thinking, holistically about parking all around that area, we might have safer streets. And that's a sort of a tangential, application. But I think that, if we removing those Phragmite, if it allows for people to use that bridge to access, the Heart of Springs, I think that would be a great thing.
And will you, with the work that's going to be done at the Old Stone Culvert, can you reach out to the Springs Food Pantry and Holly Wheaton, because they've extended their hours, because from what I understand, the wait was like an hour and a half. So they now start doing their outreach. I think it starts at like 1:30, and it used to start much later in the afternoon. Okay, I just wanted a couple of things I wanted to touch base on. One is, the town's planning department has received some criticism of late, and I'd like to set the record straight. Today, applications are moving through the town's planning department more swiftly than in years past, thanks to targeted improvements in workflow management. Historically, application wait times were longer and less predictable. That has changed. In recent years, the department introduced systems to track review timelines and set internal
internal benchmarks, steps that have resulted in a more structured and accountable process. As one of the town's busiest departments, the planning team manages a complex workload. It provides critical support to the town's appointed boards, whose decisions play a key role in protecting East Hampton's natural environment, essential habitats, and preserving the character of our community. This work is necessarily detailed and technical, and it requires careful deliberation. To further improve access and transparency, the town has begun implementing OpenGov, a digital platform that allows residents to submit and track planning applications online. This will streamline the intake process, reduce administrative delays, and make it easier for applicants and the public to engage with the planning process. In addition, the town board recently approved a resolution to retain AKRF Inc., a municipal planning consultant, to conduct a best practice study of the site plan review process. The study will help identify strategies to improve efficiency and consistency, while ensuring that all recommendations align with the town's existing code and long-term planning goals. While staff capacity is often cited, a major factor affecting review timelines is the quality of applications submitted. Delays frequently stem from incomplete materials, repeated corrections, or lack of responsiveness to established requirements, challenges that consume time and resources. The planning department remains focused on steady progress, clear communication, and a fair process for all applicants. Its work is essential to ensuring that development in East Hampton proceeds thoughtfully and in line with the values that define the town. I'd also like to address one other thing. I know that there's been some talk. We've had a couple of town department heads that have recently resigned. And like many businesses and local governments across the east end of Long Island, we continue to navigate ongoing challenges related to employee recruitment and retention, challenges that reflect broader regional trends in housing affordability, transportation, and the cost of living. At present, we have department head vacancies in our housing department, town attorney's office, and building department, along with a handful of staff level openings in the planning department. Despite these gaps, our team remains committed to delivering high quality service, and we continue to make steady progress across departments. We appreciate the dedication of our staff who are stepping up during this time, and we're actively working to fill these positions with talented individuals who are eager to serve our community. So that's what the comments that I wanted to make today. I do want to bring up, we did have a resident come during the public portion to ask about special event fees. And I was hoping that maybe we could have a discussion of that. That was for, that was Jen Folks for OMAC. She had said that the Old Montauk Athletic Club is a, I'm trying to see where I have, a 501c7. And they were looking for a reduction in special event fees. You know, in my almost 30 years living here in East Hampton, I'm very familiar with the work that OMAC does and the contributions they make to our community, the scholarships they give out, and how they support Hampton's Lifeguard Association and many of our schools' athletic teams. And I would like to see us, as we have in the past, waive the fees for special events for OMAC. I don't know how my colleagues feel.
I absolutely support that, knowing the work that OMAC does. Not all organizations can actually meet that 501c3, but if you're in that category, and I think Jen spoke very clearly of the work that OMAC has done for our community, then they should remain not being charged, as has been the history for OMAC.
Yeah, I think it's about the town code, and the town code very clearly does state that, you know, in instances where there are civic organizations that provide a public benefit, the town board does have the right to waive those fees. In this case, I would support it because I do think it meets all of those criteria.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say I would want to hear from the Special Events Committee, but Kate and Tom are the liaisons there. So if they're supportive, I am too.
On this, on a case-by-case basis, on this uniqueness of this
Yes,
organization,
absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
So we'll get that communicated, I guess, through Chelsea and Anne Marie.
I wouldn't mind getting a rugby game out here again. Just let me know.
All right, so do I have a motion to go into exec session?
we need to-
Oh, we have resolutions, sorry.
No, you can't.
Yeah, no, I can't.
All right, Resolution 2025-473. This is whereas Leah Terry Brigante offers specialized dance fitness classes, and the classes will begin in December on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. So this Wellness 60+ Wednesday afternoon Zumba classes at a cost to the town not to exceed $2,660.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Sorry, and I just one misread that the classes begin in April, apologies, and they go through December. 2025-474, this is for a wellness 60+ afternoon drawing and painting instruction. This is a new program we're offering, whereas Kate Goldman is an artist and art teacher living in East Hampton. She'll provide classes including painting, collage, mixed media, tie-dyeing, paper marbling, sculpture, and pottery. The art instruction classes are scheduled to take place April 8th and April 29th at 2 p.m. at a cost to the town not to exceed $200.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
475 is, again, a new program to offer the Jackson Pollock Painting Workshop, whereas Joyce Raimondo, the executive coordinator of the Pollock Krasner House, will provide Jackson Pollock painting workshops for the 60+ community. There'll be 4 one-hour workshops, April 22nd, April 29th, May 13th, and June 3rd, at a total cost to the town not to exceed $100.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's my pleasure to offer Resolution 2025-476. This is authorized payment for prior year invoice to Best Climate Control Corporation in the amount of $480.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I have Resolution 477, and this is to accept a grant of scenic and conservation easement, whereas a public hearing was held by the town board on March 20th on proposed grant of scenic and conservation easement. Resolved that the town board hereby accepts the easement listed below. The grantor is April Taylor. The date of the easement is February 10th, 2025. The location is 419 East Lake Drive, Montauk, and the reviewing agency is Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 478 is again a grant of a scenic and conservation easement. This is the public hearing was held on March 20th, 2025. Resolved that the town board hereby accepts the easement listed below. The grantor is Ellen Fine. The date of the easement is January 6, 2025. The location is 3 Miller Avenue in Montauk, and the reviewing agency is the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 479 is to authorize energy manager platform with NYPA, whereas the New York Power Authority offers a web-based energy management platform which can provide a virtual audit to analyze data relating to energy costs, which when completed is expected to result in energy efficiency recommendations, resulting in energy saving opportunities. Resolved that the supervisor is authorized to renew the agreement with the New York State Power Authority for the NYEM platform access at a cost not to exceed $10,795.20 for a 2-year agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 480 is for a release of securities, and this is whereas in urban renewal areas, certain securities are taken for approved road work in those areas. Resolved that the following security held by the town board is hereby released. The applicant was James Kim at 52 Dogwood Street in Montauk. It was for an urban renewal parcel at 71 Harbor Avenue in Springs. And the remitter is James Kim, and it's for $8,700.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. 481 is to release security. Again, a report was received from the town's consulting engineer approving work in certain urban renewal areas, and resolved that the following security held by the town board is released. The applicant was Van Air Homes LLC, and the urban renewal parcel is described as, hold on one second, 37 Gardeners Lanes in Springs, and it's in the amount of $22,500.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 482 is approval of various upcoming special events for March 2025. Resolved that the following special event permits are hereby approved with the conditions agreed upon by the reviewing committee. Montauk Chamber of Commerce, the annual extravaganza Easter egg hunt on the Montauk Green. This will take place Saturday, 4/12 from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Springs Improvement Society, the Springs Farmers Market. This is Jen Folks has taken over that. This is at Ashwell Hall, Saturday, 5/17/2025 through 9/27/2025, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Next is the Animal Rescue Fund of the Hamptons, ARF, Hamptons Pet Celebration Day at 124 Daniels Hole Road. This is Saturday, 5/17/2025, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Montauk Artist Association Art Show on the Green, Friday, 6/17/2025, and Sunday, 6/29/2025, from noon to 5 p.m., and Thursday, 6/25, at 3 p.m. The takedowns are the same days.
Is that a typo?
Yeah, I think that's a
It should be
typo.
6/17 to 6/19.
Yeah. So 6/17 to 6/19. I'd like to make that amendment to that portion. The Montauk Artists Association Art Show on the Green, Fridays, August 15th, 2025 to Sunday, August 17th, 2025, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. And Devon Yacht Club's fourth annual 4th of July, I'm sorry, Devon Yacht Club's many annual 4th of July celebration and fireworks show, dinner and show at 300 Abraham's Path, Abraham's Landing Road, Namagansett, Saturday, 7/5 from 5:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. The rain date is Sunday, 7/6 from 5:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Devon Yacht Club is also hosting their annual dinner dance, the Commodore's Ball, 300 Abraham's Landing Road, on Saturday, 7/25 from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the Montauk Chamber of Commerce will host the Montauk Farmers Market at the Montauk Green on Montauk Highway. The dates are listed below.
Second is amended.
Yeah.
Look at their setup dates, takedown dates, more like it should be 6/27 to 6/29.
I think they usually do them on a weekend, Carol, so I'm going to suggest that those are also a typo. And if we need to do another one, we'll do it.
June 19th is a,
Perhaps we should just pull those two from there. We can
yeah,
do them
because
next.
June 17th is a Tuesday, not a Friday.
Okay, so I'll pull. Okay, so I'll pull the parts of the resolution that have to do with the Montauk Artists Association. There's two of them for their art shows on the green. Both of them. Then we'll come back with, make sure we have correct dates.
Second as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, I have a resolution 483 to amend resolution 2024-25. This is the JCAP grant resolution. This is where the Justice Department requested authorization to submit for a grant application for financial assistance to the State of New York Unified Court System. And whereas resolution 2024-25 needs to be corrected to state that the town of East Hampton authorized the Justice Court to file an application for 24 and 25, whereas the East Hampton Justice Court received correspondence from the State of New York stating that the total amount granted is $5,750.78. Be it resolved that the town authorized the East Hampton Justice Court to file an application 2425 for funds from the State of New York Unified Court System under the Judicial Court Assistance Program in an amount not to exceed $30,000. Further resolved that the town board directs the finance office to make the following budget modifications. State aid JCAP Justice Court increased to $5,750.78. Office furniture and expenses increase that to $3,844.63. Increase office expenses in the amount of $1,906.15.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 484, this is to amend Resolution 2025-174, Long Island Mason. Long Island Mason and Concrete Corps has provided an updated quote for a lesser amount of $997.50. And this resolution is to reflect that amount.
You don't hear that more often.
Exactly.
Second, exactly, right.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 485, this is to approve change order number 1, Cantwell Court Road and Drainage Project. This is to adjust the change order number 1 scope of work is $11,150, which will increase the contract cost to $358,550.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2025-486 is the termination of employee. The town board hereby adopts the findings and recommendations set forth in the report of hearing officer Ponzi dated March 20th, 2025, and in accordance therewith, terminates the employment of Andrea Kess effective immediately.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 487, and this is to amend 2025 CSEA Schedule A to add Principal Planner 2, whereas the town has requested that the title of Principal Planner 2 be added to the CSEA Schedule A. Be it resolved that the CSEA Schedule A is hereby amended to reflect the addition of Principal Planner, grade 33, which is $40.40 per hour with a schedule of a 40 hours per week work week effective April 2nd, 2025.
Second.
Sorry, move for discussion on this one. Could you just explain, how does that position fit into the hierarchy of the planning department exactly? It's going to report into...
It's going to replace another position that we had at a different title that they don't accept anymore, and this is the new name for the title.
And so be reporting directly into the director of the department?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
One more. You have a resolution?
Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't on my, thank you, Kathy. Resolution 488 to amend Resolution 2025-455 to authorize payment of past due invoices, Mission Communications Corps, Camp Hero, in the amount of $774.
Move for discussion. I feel like we had this on the agenda in a prior week, I feel.
It's to amend it because there was a correction on the budget line.
Thank you very much. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now do I have a resolution to go into exec session?
I have a motion.
A
To go
motion.
into exec session for personnel, contracts, CPF, and advice of counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you, LTV.